In the heart of Africa's entrepreneurial background, Foundersbattlefield reveals the untold stories of daring visionaries. In episode 2, Cornered by Growth, Facing the Fear of Scaling Up, join host Michael Macharia and resilient founders Peter Kenneth Ndwati, Pauline Waroe, and Lenny Nganga. From Peter's strategic pivots to Pauline's crisis communication mastery and Lenny's operational grit, they share life lessons on conquering the fear of growth. Discover how to navigate scaling's risks, logistics, cash flow, and self-doubt to transform dreams into giants. Share with friends and colleagues on your social media channels. Happy watching, and let Foundersbattlefield light your founder's journey.
So good morning, Kenya and Africa. We again here on our second podcast as part of our series of Foundersbattlefield. As we excited to have great guests here with us, we're going to share with us significant insights. Today's conversation is around the fear in scaling. You know, we all have a challenge mentally in terms of deciding how we're going to scale our businesses as founders. And also thinking from corner shop to the next giant, to the next Walmart. How do you move from being a kiosk to a Walmart? What is the mindset required for you to do that scaling? But also, what are the fears that comes with it? So it's really the story around blood, sweat, and fears, and the occasional triumphs that comes with scaling a business. But also, as we all know, the gut feel that we feel, the fear that we feel in our belly as we make certain decisions. So I'm Michael Macharia. I'm the host with this amazing guests who are going to introduce themselves. And today's topic, which is around fear in scaling from corner to giant shop, really addresses the conversation on what it takes to build a business and how you move from being a kiosk, as we call it in Africa, and then to a major conglomerate. And it's not easy. So we are going to explore the challenges, the intrigues, the impact it has to you as an individual, the societal pressure, and also at the same time, the whole political alignment towards you becoming a big brand in your own country, and also as you grow this brand to become a global organization when you have to. So welcome to the show. I'm gonna introduce my guest, but rather than me introducing them, I'd like them to introduce themselves, but also with a vision where they can also explain how they view this whole conversation around their own domain and around what they've been able to accomplish in the last few years. I guess most of them is 20 plus years when it comes to growing businesses. So I'd like to start with Peter Kenneth Ndwati. Is that the same way to say? Michael Macharia.
It's the same
Peter
thing.
Kenneth Ndwati.
Yeah, I was called Kenneth when I was born. Then Peter was my baptism name. Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks for having me. So as you heard from Mike, my name is Peter Ndwati. I have accepted the brand entrepreneur as what what people see me at, but I'm known by different things from different people. Many people know me as a songwriter, producer, people who do know me as an insurer, financial services, and people who know me as a trader. So I sit as chairman of Peter Ndwati Group, and in that group, there are 7 businesses in different areas from marketing, from alcohol distribution, from beverages distribution, import, export. Peter Ndwati Consulting, which is a business, the latest venture where I serve SMEs mostly on business transformation based on the things that I've done. And my story of scaling is across Africa is of interest. I've gone as far as Sudan, where they're fighting. I've set up a business there and part of de-risking from the Kenyan market. And that gut fear is what we run on. And as I was telling you about breakfast, a lot of us romanticize entrepreneurship, making decisions on the fly without enough data, and it's aligned to the conversation we are having today. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Peter. I'm looking forward to this conversation, to be honest. And really, I think it's going to be an interesting area. You've been ahead of me in business. having served me when I was very young as an entrepreneur in your other businesses, in your insurance business.
Yes.
Supporting us as SMEs then. We called ourselves SMEs. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. So let's go to Lenny Nganga next. And then maybe he just also explains his industry and maybe just get to know more about Lenny.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. And I think this is a fantastic concept, and I'm very happy to be here. Because one thing I find is that as African entrepreneurs, we really don't share our stories. And I think this is a fantastic forum that you've put together to enable us to do this. So my name is Lenny Nganga. I've been in the advertising and marketing business for the last 30 years, but 22 of which with my own company, which is called the Saracen Marketing Group. Started life as a singular media agency. We just used to deal with media planning and buying, a specialist part of the advertising continuum. But now as the marketplace has evolved and media types have evolved, and we've added on different services. So now we've gone into creative, we've gone into influencer marketing, we've gone into data and analytics, all of which are in the quest to serve our customers in the best way possible. So we started off in Kenya, and then we went to Uganda, we went to Tanzania, we'd even gone to Rwanda, and we also service our clients in the South Sudan, Ethiopia, Burundi, and sometimes Malawi, Zambia. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So it will be an interesting story to hear more of your personal journey, both from as a founder, having scaled a business across multiple countries. So over to Pauline, who I know for very many years, and now last few years, she's been an entrepreneur, but also having built the largest teams for some of the largest corporates in the country. Pauline?
Thank you, Mike. I'm happy to be here. As you say, my name is Pauline Warue. I've just listened to Peter Nduati talking about being called an entrepreneur. Having come from a corporate world, I'm the typical entrepreneur who goes into business in Africa because you have nothing else to do or because times have caught up with you. So generally, I left the corporate world 10 years ago. And I started my own company. It's called East Africa Customer Care Center. I had to learn the ropes of managing a small thing, let me call it that way, having managed big corporate, learning how to budget the small money that you have. So for me, my entrepreneurial journey is typically what happens to most Africans, be it because of COVID, be it because you lost your job, or be it because you went into hard times. So I set up an organization called East Africa Customer Care, now 9 years old. And I've just last year I ventured into the Ugandan market. Beyond that, I've become an investor in various organizations, an organization called Zazela. Zazela is an e-market, an e-commerce place. So trying to penetrate markets, Uganda, Kenya, now venturing into Zambia. So that typically is my journey of being an entrepreneur.
So interesting, Pauline, and having known you a bit and long in this ecosystem, I think it'll also be interesting for you to share how you sort of help companies that are scaling and what you generally see goes wrong as these companies scale. Because I'm sure you've worked for companies that have scaled, others that have scaled and tanked, and we could learn a few lessons on what, as a third party, you saw when you worked with these companies. What did you see differently? Well, coming back cycling back to the next conversation is really laying the foundation, the why, in terms of why scale. And this also comes to a point where we need to talk about our own stories. And this is an interesting part of the conversation because it lays bare where we talked about unfiltered conversations, where you really talk about your journey and where you think you are, where you think you may have derailed, if so, where you think you could derail, and also where you think you could be in the future. So I'll start with my story. My story, actually, funny enough, I started my business exactly 25 years ago to this month, March 2000. I was 25 years. And had only worked for my first employer for only 4 years. I only had one employer. I would say I was an intern and one employer. A great individual I worked for in a company where he gave me lots of autonomy at a very young age. And I would call myself an accidental founder or an accidental entrepreneur. I found myself in a bar in Carnival in Simba Salon with a potential customer who started talking to me. And the next thing I find myself in Rwanda trying to implement for the Rwanda airline, which is now Rwandair, or is it Rwanda Airways? Is it Rwanda Airways?
Rwandair.
Yes, Rwandair. Mm-hmm. Their first technology platform at a very early age of 25 years. Then you can imagine this is year 2000. Rwanda had just come out from a very challenging moment. Rwanda was almost like a small village. And going there, and I think it's the beauty of youth. And I also encourage a lot of younger people to venture into business much earlier. Because then when you looked at that country, for me, it was an opportunity. I never looked at it as, oh, this is lacking, this is not there. There was war here. I looked at it as an opportunity where many people are refusing to go there, but I was happy to go into that market because I didn't know anything better, to be honest. For me, it was great. I looked at it as an opportunity. And one project gave birth to the next project in government, in Rwanda, the next project. Funny enough, I then ventured from there to Uganda. Again, met somebody on a flight going to Dubai, who then became my partner in Uganda, a successful businessman in Uganda today. Another founder I would like actually to talk to at some point. And then eventually, funny enough, came back to Kenya. And what we did in Rwanda is what we started replicating in our markets here. So eventually, being a finance person, ended up running a technology company with a lot of technology people. There are some interesting stories going to India to look for resources in a very, very niche area where Kenyans had not built that capability then. And then building this business across multiple countries as a technology company, moving from infrastructure to larger platforms, whether it's software, whether it is platforms, representing some of the biggest brands in the country, in the world today, where we became some of the biggest players in the marketplace. Build a business significantly to become the largest local IT integrator to companies like Safaricom, for instance, where we were the largest with a significant workforce that worked for them. Then build a business into other markets like Ethiopia, which was a very interesting market, closed market, currency issues, learned a lot in that market. Again, beauty of youth. You go to a market, you don't think about all these issues, you build a network. Expanded that business into other markets like Zambia, went to Burundi for projects, went to Zimbabwe for projects, went to Nigeria, went to Ghana, invested in companies in Portugal in the software arena, and raised capital from both angel investors to venture capital. But to be honest, things happened, things grew. And I'm not going to spend time about what it takes to build a workforce or what it takes to raise capital. Those are things we're going to discuss later. And what it takes and the toll it takes on you. But I think starting a business early allowed me to be able to take significant risks because I was not thinking about school fees. I was not thinking about if I fail, what's going to happen tomorrow. I was not thinking if I failed, what people are going to say about me. So I guess I would encourage many people to start businesses when they're young. But the story where things start going crazy is whereby as you scale, you need more capital. And definitely you realize you're losing control of your business because you have to bring investors in your business who definitely you start realizing don't have the say. You have to be able to create some level of engagement with your investors to have this conversation. But to a large extent, where I know that the rain started hitting us was when we started having what we call single customer risks. So yes, you build a business, massive business. You have two options. One option is to build multiple customers who then you distribute your risk. But in my case, my first risk was building my business first through private sector and having one large customer who controls 70% of my business. Now, what happens in a business like that, if, for instance, you're doing $1 billion plus from one customer, and there's a change of management in that customer, because CEOs change, management change, the next thing, without realizing, all of a sudden, because you're doing massive business with that customer, because of change of management, there's such significant level of political headwinds that hit you. And all of a sudden you realize that the same customer that you're serving diligently, The politics within the organization become your biggest challenge. And we move from, believe it or not, we move from $1 billion shillings revenue from this customer to less than 50 million within 14 months. You think a customer like that, where you've put 60% of your workforce under one customer, the risk is so tremendous, right? Such that how do you retool that new workforce? How do you get all this workforce from one company that gave you all this revenue and now move that to another company? That was very challenging for me as an entrepreneur. So you move from significant revenue, having significant shareholders in your business who invested because of that opportunity. Now you think, what do you do? So we retooled ourselves, good or not good. I decided, look, I'm not going to get myself in this position again. But I think I did again, and we never learned. I found myself now with the next big customer, which was government. Now, government, I thought, what possibly could happen, really? Yeah, there's not going to be change of management, but that didn't really work like that. So we found ourselves again in the heart of government, massive project, 5 billion shilling project with government, X amount of employees, many employees working on this project, and that became the biggest, what we call onerous project we're doing for that project. Now, all of a sudden, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, you realize you've got this massive project, all these employees, and you're working for this one customer. Then what happens? Things go belly up. Why? Because the customer has their own issues. That's a story for another day. But what happens? That big business that looked very big with a significant valuation, massive valuation, then becomes almost nothing overnight, because then you're either something you've derailed because of whatever challenges you're having within that political sphere, because rarely when you work with government, the biggest challenge for you as a company is also political fear. And I want to also step in and say, and we're going to discuss it, what does it take when you become so big as a technology company and you're getting all these onerous contracts on merit?
Yes.
On merit. Now all of a sudden, you have too many enemies. They don't understand why you. It's not about why you. You build a business. You build capability over 20 years. So what do they mean by why you? But again, those are problems you have to face as you scale. People are going to question why you. Why? Who is your father? Who is your family name? But you don't have a family. Your family name is your parents, who are normal parents, brought you up, give you capability. But why are you, right? Those are questions you need to understand. And you start realizing, as you scale your business for us, you go closer to the sun. And the sun is also politics. Politics and business becomes very integrated. We're going to talk about this in one of our topics. So for me, the story as I hand it over to Mr. Ndwati is saying and look at our story from that point, creating context. What is the risk of scaling your business? And what does it do to you as an individual? Also from a brand point of view. You go everywhere, you go in town, people know your name. You stand out there in the traffic, people want your name, people know your name. People send you CVs. Politicians look for you. Every funeral you have to be called to. These are all challenges that come with scaling your business. And this is risk that you have to deal with. Now, you also become a target in many environments, right? You become a target, right? You become a target. We're going to talk about later why do people say don't become big because KRA is going to come to your business. It's okay. With governance, you have to deal with all these issues because KRA is KRA. They want tax. Yes, you've said you've just made X amount of money. Naturally, KRA is going to come to your business and ask you where's the money if it doesn't tally to the back office of their tax collection capability. There's also the issue of investors who then invest in your business. And when that fallout happens, for instance, how many of those investors are going to stay with you? Because sometimes the question is, are you the problem? But how are you the problem, for instance, if you couldn't control what the government did, for instance? You become the problem. So how do you build moving on? Subsequently, I built another business, which was, I decided, will never find myself in this position again. I decided to build what we call a consumer-led business, which is what we are building called Ponea Health. And then I said, I'll make sure I'll never be a servant to somebody who holds me by my neck and says you can't move. So that's a different conversation. And that also is an interest in business. Also, you also remember that even as you scale a business, a consumer-led business, the challenges are also very different, right? You move away from one large customer, and now you're moving towards consumer-led business. So I would like to stop there. At least I've set the context. Having run a business, having scaled a business, having moved to a significant valuation from zero to about $58 million business valuation, having lost all that value as a business from $58 million to less than $10 million valuation business, what does it take? How do you feel? Is that paper money? Should I have cashed earlier? Should I have exited earlier in my business? Should I have sold this business? At what point was I hoping to build it to $200 million? At what point do you say enough, right? At what point do you know this business at scale is going to become a challenge? So I have to hand it over to Peter with this sort of context to sort of share his story. And then now we then move to understanding as the other colleagues, Lenny and Pauline, go through, we then can really interrogate why some of these things happen, because all of us have got personal stories. And then what do we need to do about it, or what can we advise the future generation to think through as they are building businesses. And this is not really future generation, it's also you today who is running a business thinking, what's going to happen if I make that leap? So Peter, I hope you know my story. I think you've been reading it.
I know your details.
You know the story, how it goes?
So, Mike, you and I met at Young Chief Executives Forum.
Yes.
I was 31. And we had gone into business. And we couldn't find mentors, some people to guide each other. So we decided as a group of young people, let us mentor each other. So that's how Young Chief Executives were formed. And we used to meet like once a month in forum just to help each other. I went into business, my main business, insurance, after working for the market leader in the space. And you hit the glass ceiling in the business. You try and introduce ideas in the products to your employer for reasons sometimes political. The product is rejected, and you're young. You decide, why can't I go out and do this for myself? Fortunately, for the employer who I had worked for previously had exposed me in the East African market. So I had worked in different countries. So even when I registered my first business, I had to put East Africa on it. Although it was downtown in Court's house, in like a small room, I started with the end in mind. I kept asking myself when I went into business, can this be a 1 billion Kenya shillings business then? 1 billion was a lot of money 25 years ago. Bootstrapping, raising capital. I raised money from friends and family. Please note, I entered an industry that was unregulated. It was in the insurance space, but the category, health insurance, was unregulated. Previously, there were companies called HMOs that came and left. A lot of white people led. That was also another challenge that I was competing with CEOs that were white, and they were able to penetrate in places that I could not get into. But I kept to my faith because I had the experience. And of course, I knew I had time because I was young. So yeah, quickly, 18 months, raised the capital required. I took myself to the regulator and say, how do we regulate this particular space? It's a very weird position to be that industry is now fully regulated, but me and 2 other people went and said, look, we want to get regulated because being regulated helped confidence. When you're doing a service business, it's about you and what people perceive of your brand. So within 4 years, I knew this was the right business. We had broken even. My partners could see value. Fortunately, 2 of the investors in my business were also insurers. So they were not only mentoring me in the space, but they could see the journey. An industry where it wasn't profitable, so you are growing to sell. So you already know that you're growing this business to create a brand, have a customer base, but eventually you'll exit. 6 years after running it, back in the market raising money. Because you want to grow. And that time you just want to grow in Kenya. Open a branch, get out from that small space in city center to get your own space. To opening a branch in Nakuru, Uganda, Kisumu, Mombasa. And then one of the errors that I made, I was so focused on beating for my employer that even when we became bigger, I surpassed it. And it was a very narrow vision at that particular time. So yeah, 6 years later, raised capital from an angel, grew the business. Again, still in Kenya. In 2008, decided to get out of Kenya into other markets. And my reasons were valid at that particular moment. We've just gone post-election violence. The economy is kind of tanked. And then you want to diversify, not the offering of the product, but diversify to a different audience and spread your risk across. So Tanzania was, for me, the natural place to go because I had worked in Tanzania for my former employer, so I had a natural market. I knew I knew the lay of the land, but that was also very tough because I go to Tanzania, and the Tanzania government, the first thing they tell me, we cannot accept this brand because it doesn't have the word insurance in the name for your business. So you have to register a company with the word insurance in it, and I did. And for that reason, I had to become a general insurer. They didn't have a category for health insurance. Remember, I'm a monoline player. I'm not a general insurer.
When you say monolith, you mean like
one product. I used to do health only. That's what I mean, since the 90s, that's all I had done, and I understood it. But now you're being forced to bring new skills. You need to understand the culture. You enter in the Tanzanian market, first of all, before you sell the product, you have to explain Bima ya Afya, what it means to the person. Then you sell the product to them. So you're not only introducing the industry, your brand, then your product. And we did well in Tanzania because we understood and studied it. But still, you don't have data. Now, of course, naturally, the next country you want to go to is where Uganda. Uganda, there was no regulation, so you go with the original structure. In fact, Uganda, we even used to run clinics. It was the health value chain. You enter there, again, a different level of regulation. Culture, again, totally different. But you also, although you're growing the business, operating cash flows. So you have to raise money. So on the 10th year, we took PE money, private equity money from Germany. We sold 25%. So we all got diluted, no one exited. And we continue running the business. Opportunity come, South Sudan, a new country, health insurance. So in South Sudan, you could not enter at that particular time without a local. So we partnered with a local insurance company. So now I'm running Kenya, wholly owned. I'm the CEO. I'm also group, so I'm running Tanzania. As a general insurance company, we are doing all lines of insurance. I'm running Uganda, including health provision, not just insurance. Then you go to Sudan, you're running a partnership, a JV. That complexity. Now you're managing board members from a PE fund who have an internal rate of return, 25% that they want by the time they're exiting. So they kind of own you. You have your local partners who have not had dividends now, it's 10 years, not 12 years, and they're getting antsy. Some of this includes family, there are people around you. And then you're thinking, I still want to grow this business. Because eventually, in my mind, I was going to sell the company. So that level of complexity. And every time you take money, there's a word that follows money called covenant. Nobody gives you money and tells you, oh, go do what you want to do. I want a right to personnel. I want a right to strategy. I must get a board position. Or some people will come and say, the chairman has to be us. Your agenda has to be drawn by us. Whereas you started a business for freedom and independence, now you go to a situation where you're owned by other people. But that PE fund was excellent in terms of giving me value, training. They wanted to focus on impact. So I'm telling my original funders, be patient. Be patient. We will make money. And they did. My original funders left. There's one partner who left with 8 times money. And I can give you indications. I have a person who gave me 4 million shillings in 2003. And I bought him for 400 million. So I made my investors money. Even the original PE fund that came in, they bought 25%. At the time of exiting, they left with their target IRR. So, but you have these dreams. I wanted to be number one in the space, and I became number one in the space, but I also wanted to be number one in Africa. But this time now, you also have to think about this family. You don't have the same level of energy. And then sometimes you need to taper down your ambition. But in the middle of the 2014, I started feeling I need to go into other lines of business. For now, de-risking me as a person, because the industry had become very complex. And now I'm in 7 African countries, and I've been depending on a salary. So the liquidity, I thought, is the time to cash out. And one of my first regrets is selling the company. So initially, I was going to sell a percentage to cash out, but the party wanted control and they wanted an anchor in the Kenyan market. So initially sold majority, then eventually exited. But our exited and stayed a year for stakeholder management. You get put on what they're called golden handcuffs. During that pace of scaling is where now the first mistake happened. Because you have a strategy that is misaligned. Your partner wants to have a branch in every county. They want you to do everything kind of, like I don't have an experience in engineering insurance. So you're getting an insurer who can underwrite that. You're trying to get a technical person who understands that. All of a sudden you have a group structure where there's a group head of risk, the companies have a head of risk. So you're managing a very complex business. And you're no longer the vision carrier because now it's owned by other people. Boardroom fights, that happens to most of us. One day when I tell my story, I need to talk about how you select the right partner and what covenants you should give up on. Within a year of selling the business, and I had actually left the country, I thought I should buy it back. And that was another regret because it took me a while. Regulator bought battles. The fact that you've aligned with an individual, that with the partners that you want to buy the company back, you're raising money at the back end to buy the business back. It doesn't look the same. Now you're doing motor insurance, which is a killer. So the funders eventually ended up selling the business to someone else, and we know what had happened with that business. What I did well for me is taking the money out and investing in different sectors. But just like Mike, I went and got in an agency. We had one major customer, one. So again, now you're going into a business, you want to grow, but you also need to de-risk because you're dealing with a powerful party. And now you're also going into an industry where you're new, you're learning at the same time. Well, we managed to conquer that. We de-risked the business. And then because of aligning my personal brand to a business brand, which is, it could be right or wrong. But at that particular time, when I just saw Michael Joseph, who was CEO of Safaricom, and I thought, every time you see Michael Joseph, Safaricom is the same party. And actually, when even Bob Collymore came, it was the same thing that I saw, and I like giving those two examples. So I felt, and the advice that I took was, your personal brand should be also your business brand. But you've sold the company, so any error being made there, it's you. There was a time in 2021, I trended for 6 days. My name. There was even a whole article, the rise and fall of the insurance maverick, But you cannot tell the story. And I still haven't told that story, which I plan to. Meanwhile, the people tanking your business are in London somewhere, sitting comfortably. Nobody knows them. So now court battles. And that's the reason I started when we were having breakfast about romanticizing entrepreneurship. I didn't listen to my gut, so I sold. But you sell and you don't tell the story that you've sold. So you're going to the streets and everybody is telling you. I went downtown Maryland in a supermarket. Someone told me, you stole $6 billion and ran away to America. And you're there with your children and they know the story. Then why don't you answer back? Is it because people have a perception of you? And the truth always comes out at the end of the day. So that was a very tough time for me as an entrepreneur. But as an entrepreneur, again, you don't give up. Opportunities come. So I'm in 7 different sectors. I still have businesses in multiple markets. I've learned those particular lessons. For me, part of my legacy is to ensure that people who are following us don't make the same mistakes. Okay? Understand how to negotiate. Understand that partnership is key. You need to be comfortable with making tough decisions without data. Even now, even though we have more data than what we had 25 years ago, we're still making decisions. Currently, one of my businesses is entering Tanzania again. I don't know how I'm tied with Tanzania. Tanzania again, without enough data. So, but my gut tells me it's the right thing to do, so I'm doing it, having learned a lot more. So this scaling issue and the fear, where you wake up at 3 a.m., all of us wake up at 3 a.m. for a reason I don't know why 3 a.m., and you open your eyes and you find your problems waiting for you there outside your bed. So you can't run away from it. That time you've tried to do everything, research, you've gotten the talent right, you have the capital, but something tells you this may go wrong. We try and wish away that thought, that fear. A lot of us try and walk away from it. Eventually, it catches up with you there in the future. So scaling is not for the faint-hearted. Maybe I should have remained a monoline player in downtown Nairobi and become a legacy business so my kids will come into it. Maybe that would have been the decision. Do I think I made a mistake by investing across Africa and having to take other people's money? Yeah, there are many times I tell myself it was not the right decision. Because now in my 50s, that's not what I should be focusing on in reinventing my brand. If you see me on social media, I've reinvented myself. And I'm also giving back by consulting, sitting with business and tell them, have you considered this? Have you considered that? And I'm selling that as a service.
Wow, it's interesting. We, as part of Peter, your story is interesting because I think it validates what we're trying to do. So, as part of the next 30 episodes, I think we're on our second one. You've touched on 8 other episodes are going to be coming through. Eight. One of them is capital mafia.
Right.
When you think you've been given, think you've raised money, it's not. You should not consider the people you raise money as your friends. Maybe 10% will be your friends or 5%. They want a return. So look at it as capital mafia. And sometimes the person who invests in your business may do it selfishly, and then their selfish interest will collapse your business.
Right.
Okay, so that's something we're going to talk about. And then also when to let go.
Yes.
Talked about building back your business, buying back. You know you've already sold.
Yes.
Why are you trying to come back? At what point should you have just said, let go?
Yeah.
Right? That's also a topic we have. We also have a topic about hubris as an individual, right? Yes. You as an individual.
Yes.
You know brand you and brand company. At what point does brand you and brand company separate? That's also going to be another conversation you're going to have. Yeah. At what point do people introduce in a room and not mention your company? You know, they look around, they say, hey, Peter from.
Yes.
Can I just be Peter Ndwati? Can I be Mike Macharia and not necessarily Mike Macharia from?
They
say, so if you lose that brand, then who are you on the table?
Correct.
You ask yourself, who am I on the table? I think police is going to tell us, the corporate. And something else you talked about, how people view you. Sitting somewhere in the US, the mirror image, you know, the mirror effect.
Yes.
You know how you are in the mirror.
Correct.
But how are people viewing you? That's also another topic we're going to be talking about. And then the issue of mental health.
Yes.
You just mentioned at some point, it was a lot.
Yeah.
So how does it affect you mentally? And then also he talked about giving back. So we have a topic called resume versus eulogy. You know your resume today. If God forbid anything happens to us, somebody will just take your CV, run it on ChatGPT, say summarize.
Yes.
2 paragraphs. Yeah. But your resume, your eulogy will be longer. Is that because how you made people feel?
Correct.
And finally, the issue of trust fund. When you talked about businesses, the businesses that survive and scale, multi-generational. Multi-generational. Are the businesses that we've seen that are scaled multi-generational? In all our businesses here are one generation. Even the ones I interviewed last week.
Correct.
And I'm very keen to see a second generation entrepreneur who we're going to be bringing to the picture in the next episodes. But to understand, does it mean scaling? And that's part of our conversation as we go to Lenny. Are you going to be able to leave this business to your family? And then when I look at Lenny, even your business as you jump in your industry, is there anybody who has been able to be a second generation who has left their business to scale? And who should do the scaling? You or your second generation? So when you said you should have remained in that vertical, part of the questions I think we're going to, once we do this, we're going to ask each other business questions. Because how would you have done it differently? But one of the things you talked about, fear in your gut, 3 o'clock. You know what I figured out? I can maybe give you my cheat sheet. When I sleep at 3 o'clock, I think my most important moments when I make a hard decision is when I'm in the shower.
In the morning.
You know, cold water has a very interesting impact on you. You know, when you're behind a shower and you're naked, and that water is hitting you, you know, I make very hard decisions then. So one thing I'll never compromise is a good shower.
Okay. It's an interesting.
Because you're there, you know, you're bare, right? So you're thinking, okay, that problem, The moment I leave that shower to grab a towel, the decision I've made, I'll go with it, even if I know I always make that decision I take and run with. It's crazy.
Right.
And I've made some of the best decisions the moment I step off the shower.
Okay.
Crazy. Maybe just put a little bit of cold water, and then you remove the fear from your stomach. Maybe you'll tell us how do you get that fear out of your stomach? You guys will tell us. Lenny,
Talk about it.
Lenny, over to you. Interesting story, a very interesting story. It has given me a lot of nostalgic moments, Peter. Lenny, over to you. Very keen to hear how your industry operates.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so just to give a bit of context, especially around this discussion of scaling, is around, there's two stories. I worked for two global advertising companies before I started Saracen with three other partners. And one thing I got to realize is the year I think was 2000, and an edict came down from New York and said that all offices must reduce headcount by 6%.
60.
6%. Very specific number. Because the chairman of this agency had made a promise to Wall Street that he was going to deliver a particular profit number. And it was not looking like it was going to be possible. So the only way to do that was to reduce headcount. At that time, I was running a unit here in Kenya, and we just won significant business. And I'm being asked to cut 6% of people, and I was actually in the process of hiring. So it was a very tough time, and it was a bit of a tussle. Eventually, I ended up preserving the jobs of the people who were working with me. But that is something I said to myself, if I ever start a company, this is something I'll never do. Right. I'll never sacrifice people specifically for the sake of profit. I saw it happening. The second instance was a time when people were being promoted, and they would always bring white people from outside. Black guys who are there, who were even like deputy MD, are passed over. Somebody else comes in and is put in there because they're white. And there was a time even when we had one guy who was coming to replace an MD who had resigned. This guy had first of all was being brought in as a GM, then he got promoted to deputy MD and then to MD before he landed in Kenya. When he landed, he was a disaster. I mean, like, you get a CEO, their first memo is that no one should have more than 2 teaspoons of sugar. What kind of person is that? Because they're not qualified for the position. So for the first time ever in this company's history, we had a rebellion, and we said we're not going to work with this CEO. So they had to get rid of him. And what did they do? They brought in another white guy who actually used to report to me and now became my CEO. That's when we realized that there was a black ceiling. Not a glass one, a black one. And that's when we decided we have to leave and get out of this company, but also make sure that anytime we have a company, whatever company we're going to build, people are going to be promoted on merit and nothing else. So those are some of the founding tenets that we decided we're going to start the company with. And when we got out of this employment, we agreed with my business partners we were going to save enough money for us to live for a year without a salary at the same level of life we were living at. So we had been saving up. So then when we jumped out, then we started running the company. And of course, it was not easy. We're very lucky in that there's one friend, the late Sharad guy, who actually gave us a fully furnished office in a very nice location, Mobile Plaza, Muthaiga, here. He gave us the office and told us, you guys pay me when you can.
Wow. Did he ask for shares?
No.
Okay.
Because I mean, we had no income, we had nothing at the moment at that time. And we learned some very interesting lessons there, because like one big client was actually pitching their business, and we had been handling that business like 6 months prior, before we started the agency. And we went and we pitched for it. And one of the reasons why we didn't get the business was one person sitting in the room said, these guys want to finance their business using our cash flows. Despite the fact that we were the best at the job, but we didn't get it. So we had to scale organically. And that old adage of it takes 1,000 days to stabilize a business was very true. It took us 3 years basically to get into a stable position. But we had some great clients who took a leap of faith with us. Like one of them was the late Harald Schmidberger, who owned Red Bull and also Mamba Village and so on. He was quite a character. But he came along with us when we left, and he said, it was not the company's name that was running my business, it was you guys.
Yes.
So he helped us in that way in terms of like injecting capital, but we grew organically, and it was quite tough. But when we got to the 1,000-day mark and started stabilizing, then that's when we started thinking about opening other branches. And then the first one to open was Uganda. And that was natural progression for us because one of my business partners' wife was Ugandan. So it was okay for him to move there and also with his family and establish a business there. And the model we decided we're going to be taking is when we go into a new market, we look for local partners who can help us to open doors and inject some expertise, give them a minority shareholding, but we retain the majority. And that's the model we went with in Uganda. So Uganda also went on, took a while, but it grew and mostly servicing clients out of Kenya. And then Uganda was quite stable and running okay. Then we decided now in 2011, it was time to open Tanzania. This is 9 years after we opened Kenya. And we did the same thing. A local partner with a minority shareholding. But this one was a disaster. The partner talked a very good game. And you know, in Tanzania, finding great talent is not easy.
It's tough.
So we found this partner, talked a very good game. We agreed, yes, started the agency. The company started running quite well. But 2 years later, we got hit by the taxman. And the taxman uncovered some things that had been going on in that company that were being done that we didn't know. And it taught us a very painful lesson there. Controls. Because we were scaling, and we were scaling using our own so-called expertise and thinking that everything is going to run the same way we run it here in Nairobi, and expecting that the Tanzania partners were going to do the same, but it wasn't. So we ended up with some pretty large fines, and eventually when this partner actually took some money out of the business, fraud, as it were. Yeah.
Wow.
So we had to cover that now from the funds that we are running with in Nairobi. And that also gave us a large fear of bringing on board anybody else, because you're not sure what kind of partner you're going to get. Lucky for us, the partners in Uganda were very exemplary people, and they're very stand-up people, and they actually helped the business. Tanzania was a different story. So that's one of the biggest fears for us has always been, what kind of partner are we going to get? Because we also opened an office in Rwanda. And Rwanda, I mean, it was amazing. The experience was amazing at the time, because in Kenya it used to take, I think, something like 21 days to register a company. Rwanda, we did it in 24 hours. We couldn't believe how quick it was. But the mistake we made, we had not properly sized the market. When we went in and realized the market was too small for our specialist skill. Remember, at that time, we were only dealing with one aspect of advertising. So after about a year, we had to shut down the business. It was just not viable. So that's another thing, that when you're scaling, you have to really look at the market, look at the size of the market, and understand the potential for your business in that market. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. You've also raised very interesting points. That part of them, I think, Peter raised, I believe, but also new points that I think add up to some of the upcoming shows. It would be interesting. One of them he talked about, we have a topic called the academic paradox, the education paradox. So why is it that your first employer looked at you and figured out, apart from race and everything else? And one of the things I said in my last episode, there are things that will never go away. I mean, I can tell you. Governments will always be in your life as an entrepreneur. Greed will always be there. People are greedy. The issue of race card will always remain because some people have, it's just life. So don't try and change those things. Figure out how to maneuver around them. That's what you guys figured out. So we have something called academic paradox, which says you have all the skills, but somebody else believes that you don't have the skill. Yeah, is it your education system? Yeah, maybe your education system is the ideal education system required to execute that mandate. But another guy coming thinks they can, but maybe they need to localize their understanding. So we have that topic, which is interesting. The next one is also people and talent. I think your business is purely around human beings.
Yes, correct.
Truly about human beings. Without human beings, if you sacrifice human beings in your business, then you have an issue, right? Then the next one is also scarcity versus abundance mentality. what happens, as you said, some people want you to fail. Think about it. And some people will encourage you to succeed. So you talked about your Red Bull guy that gave you support. And you talked about earlier, you said that some customers would say, why are we giving Saracen business to fund them? That's a scarcity mentality. Totally scarcity. Sometimes, I don't know how it works for you guys. I go and pitch. Before we build a brand, I go pitch. When you have a personal brand, when you sit in a presentation table, I think there's a little bit of behavior, decorum. That moment I used to go and pitch. The first 15 minutes, everybody in the table is mentioning why this won't work. Does it happen to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, you say, like, why? Why? They don't even know what I'm saying. Everything is no, can't work, can't work, can't work, can't work. Nobody says, okay, hold on, that's a good idea. Okay, maybe a little bit less optimize it, let's do this. That to me is a scarcity mentality. So even time I go and pitch, there's always that subconsciousness that somebody's about to dress me down, as opposed to trying to figure out if you can do the project or not. That's something I found as you left the country and you went to new countries. You went to Nigeria, for instance. Guys are listening to you. Hey, tell us, what can you do? So I found that, I'm sure it's a Kenyan thing, you guys will tell me or not. But I find that that's something we don't talk about, scarcity and abundance. And the last thing we also talked about is trust. So a guy who gave you the business trusted you. Sometimes it's about trust, right? When we build business, a lot of business with Safaricom, as when we were a big integrator for them, everybody used to say that Michael Joseph and I are good friends. Michael, to be honest, I barely even had dinner with Michael Joseph. I don't know Michael Joseph, I know him from arm's length. Now, so everybody assumes you must know somebody at the top. Nobody is thinking, maybe you're very good at what you do. Because eventually, when all these things happened and they stopped becoming my large customer, they ended up hiring my same people. So most of those people work within the organization. So what was the problem? Was the problem me? Or was the problem? What was it? What's the issue, right? So again, I find that a very interesting scenario. And that brings me Pauline, who I've worked with also in Safaricom, in some projects. Now she's an entrepreneur. At some point, she can tell us how many people. She basically may be one of the people I know who has built the largest teams under her at a country level. Because also as you scale, people become your biggest asset. How do you scale at a Pan-African level? How do you even scale at a country level? So over to you, Pauline.
All right. Yes, Mike. Scaling. Let me first start from my own perspective of really who I am and how I got to be able to scale. I think one of the things that I look at when we look at even businesses is who you are as a person. Where did you come from? I'm a child of 2 teachers, primary school teachers. So discipline is key. I'll keep time. I will remember I did not do something because we also grew up in the generation of being whipped. You knew you would be whipped by end of day. You'd just go and check somewhere behind and you would see very well, some small whips waiting for you because you misbehaved. So we are children that were brought up through a very disciplined system. And then, having been brought up by teachers, I believed in working diligently. So it is you go to school, you finish university, you join a company, you work very hard. Because deep down, you can hear your mother's voice or your father's voice. It never left you, it has never left us, that you have to do what is right. And for me, I became corporate. I went into organizations. I did so well. Why? Because I was disciplined enough, and my mother always used to say, you must work hard. You must be disciplined. And I didn't know these were very key, fundamentals in forming me into becoming, growing in my career. And as I grew in my career, at no point was my vision entrepreneur. That word belonged to other people. And so I joined organizations. I worked for organizations like Capital Pages. That's Capital FM. I worked for Kensel, Celtel, Airtel Now. I moved into Chevron Oil, East Africa, Egypt. And then I joined Safaricom. And I was a star in my career. But then one day, I was told, thank you. It's been real. But before that, I would say I looked, because of the discipline, the understanding of what I'm doing, the looking around to see where is this business going. Because also, one of the things that you realize when you're in a corporate world, when you are like your employees now, or our employees, the way they look at us, we are supposed to facilitate.
Yes.
You're supposed to give them money to go and do this or this and that. So scaling was strategically also supported by the organization. However, I had a good mind. Like I remember when I joined Safaricom, I found the organization thinking about outsourcing the call center. And I remember going to Michael and telling him, Michael, I'm going to move this resort from here to here. And he told me, are you sure? And I told him, yes, I'm going to do it. And for sure, when I walked in, I remember we were picking about 12,000 calls a day. And with the same team, I had moved it to 23,000. Because I was looking, people think customer care, because that's what I was doing, is really about just talking to customers nicely. It's really also a resource planning issue. It's a numbers game. You have all these calls coming in. You have all these requirements for the customers. You have this limited resources, and you have to balance out. And these are some of the lessons that I learned from there, so that even when you are scaling, you're actually scaling using tangibles. You're not just scaling. Now, my story starts when on March 20th, it's actually almost 10 years to date, when I walked out and I remember I was called and I was told, thank you.
Kwaheri.
Kwaheri, bye, thanks. To me, having grown through the corporate,
How many employees did you have then?
1,600.
No.
In the same room, 100 managers in total. So I am this person, wherever I walk, everybody knows Pauline of Safaricom. Pauline, and it was actually, I was managing almost 50% of the organization. So I remember I was there, I kept improving myself also. I was in Strathmore doing my MBA and very many other courses. And I remember now when I was told, bye, I was stranded. 45 years of age, 20 years career came to a halt. I didn't know anything else. I only knew, and that's why I talked about being a child of teachers. Teachers who were born, they became teachers, they retired teachers, and they died teachers. I was in the same trajectory. I remember walking out of that organization, and that was on a Friday. You get fired on Friday at 4 p.m.
Yes.
That is the standard.
Because
Yeah.
you can go and have a drink.
Yes, and that is exactly what I did. and walking out, I was like, it was surreal, because I had never even had a warning letter in my life, or even been reprimanded. I'm Pauline the star. Yeah? And then after that, I looked at my phone, and there was me, child of the village, Maroa village, breaking news. And I'm wondering, when did I get here? I'm such a humble, kawaida. Let me use that person.
Wait, breaking news for what?
I've been fired.
Robbie has to know.
Yeah, the world has to know that you've been fired. The next day, you are trading online. Oh, she stole. Oh, she did this. So I'm seeing all this I'm on TV news. And I'm thinking, wow, where do I start? What is all this? And sometimes you think it is a nightmare. And then Saturday came. I was, I had my Friday. And then it is the Monday thereafter that hits you. And why I said I am an entrepreneur born of circumstances, not by choice. And that is the African story. So Monday comes and you look and you ask yourself, everybody else has left. I have nowhere to go. So what do I do? Do I start writing applications? My brother is already kaput, because people have come up with all manner of things. If you have ever traded on social media, there's what you see trading, and then there is you, the person, when you are left alone. And the bloggers have a field day talking about you and what you have done and where you have been, anything that they can lay their hands on. And Monday is empty. I remember reading an article, somebody saying they were living in an apartment. And the basement where they used to fight for parking, wondered, how comes this basement is so big? Because you've never seen the basement during the day. Yeah. You go very early in the morning, you check in very late in the night. That is the career person. And so going on, I started thinking, what do I do? I have read all these stories that you do what you know. Don't go settling into doing things you don't know. And I started toying with the idea of opening my own office. And remember, the office I know is C-suite. So where do I go? In the middle of Kilimani, I look for a good office. It's already done, but my office cannot look like this. My office has to be corporate. People who come and see me, when you're talking of the office of being given, I'm losing my savings to make an office that is typically my standard. And then I have no client. Who do I call? These people, they used to come to me. Now, how do I transform into the person calling people to ask them for something, whereas it is me they used to come to ask for business? And so I started my journey there. Getting the legal services to register the company. Please note, I've never registered companies because why? I am corporate. I have all the good things in life, driver, security. I'm okay. So I registered the company through the learning. This is my first step. So it's baby steps into entrepreneurs. And I'm talking to that person also in the corporate world who is sitting there and knows at the end of it, you have to come back to where we are. And I remember then after starting the company, I started talking to people. And I'm feeling ashamed because I look like a beggar. How am I calling you and telling you, you remember me? It is Pauline Waroe. And one day, and I don't even know, I have hired and scaled a big business. Yes. But I've never done it on my own for myself. I don't even know how to sell myself. I sold myself last at an interview. And then my brand was, I remember going to Rwanda immediately thereafter, and I just went to have to steam out. And at the airport, I remember those forms you fill. And I always used to feel Safaricom, director. When I had to fill that form, I looked. The partner always knew what he was. I did not know who I was. And for a minute, I was like, what do I feel here? Yeah? And it was even, I think my passport had expired and I had to fill for a passport also. And I was wondering, what do I feel? Because I can't feel entrepreneur. No way. Yeah? So by and by, I remember now, after talking to various people, my first client was Office of the Registrar of Political Parties. And I'm forever grateful to that lady called Lucy, who was there acting as the head. And she told me, I would like you, you're so good in what you do. Why don't you come and train my people? And I remember we went to Kenya School of Law, and I will never forget the moment. I didn't even care for the money, but I cared to see that for the first time, somebody has commissioned me to actually do something as myself, not as Pauline of Safaricom. And those water bottles up to today, the way you enter training and the 2 water bottles are there. They actually touched me so much that I gave it on my own. And at the end of the day, and I had a team, I had 16,000 shillings, which we shared equally. And I was like, I'm in the game. And from there now I got confidence because I didn't even know how, creating this content. I used to call the trainers, have you trained these people? Have you done? And, this is the thing that you need to learn as an entrepreneur. Where do I start? Who am I? What do I need to put in place? What are the requirements? Are you ed to ed? Or are you privileged because maybe your first deal is because you got a government deal because I know so and so. And I started now looking out at bigger companies. Suddenly, organizations like Jamii Telecoms are like, oh, come, you're the one who sorted out Safaricom. Come. Build for us a contact center. AR Hospital Kiambu Road is telling me, come, train our organization, Liquid Telecoms. You see, now looking at that, those are some of the things that I learned, how to build a company, that you do not build just sitting. Sorry, you don't just sit and wait. You have to walk in. There were many challenges. Number one, I have talked about knowing yourself, knowing your brand. Costing, how do you price? You don't even know how much people. You have come from a very big brand that was paying premium. Now here you're going into a lot of organizations, and you mostly get businesses from SMEs when you start. Individuals and SMEs, people you know. And one of the key lessons I learned here is that you have to keep your networks, even when you're working, wherever you are. Manage your networks and never burn your bridges. Why? I have survived by the grace of the people I knew through my career. They're the ones who gave me business. Number two, I look back and I was like, when you start a business, please start from the bottom. Do not start, you must have a vision, yes, but sometimes build the fundamentals. I always say, nobody remembers the engineer who built this building. But we always look and we'll always remember the person who brought that lantern, because the chandelier, because you can see it, it's beautiful. But real, the fundamentals of this building is the engineering. But who cares? So when you're building, the engineer part is very, very, very fundamental. The other thing that I learned when you're scaling your business also is you'll be ashamed. You'll be turned down. Let me tell you, after having managed so many people in my life, everywhere I walk, every organization I work in this country, I just say, hi, Pauline. And these are the people I go for business from. And some look at me like, suffer. I've talked about the way we put business. I remember walking into one organization, and the person sitting on the other side was part of my team. And they looked at me like, I can't believe you're on that side of the seat. And you can feel it. They won't tell you, but you can feel the energy. And this is some of the challenges that you have to overcome. You must have thick skin, very thick skin, so that whatever happens today doesn't affect your tomorrow. So that when you go and you're waiting for this big deal, if you lose it, it doesn't mean you will not go for the afternoon appointment. You have to show up even at that appointment, no matter what. I think some of the things also, Mike, that you have also touched on is that we are overly dependent on one client when you're scaling up. So when you get a good client, you are like, it's tea time, I'm good. But the reality is you should always work like you're at risk of losing this client. And you should always plan like a good business development partner. I always say to scale, you have to be a very good development manager to get out and actually start looking out for business, because, I remember doing sales. You have to plan for today, next year. For next year, you have to do it today. So those are some of the things that I learned when I was trying to scale a business. Then going out into other countries, the challenges of the unknown. You don't know where you're going. You walk into Uganda, the people there, I have seen so many of my friends go to countries, even where you're told it's very easy to actually go and set up a business. But the business partners you get there, what happens? They're waiting to milk you dry. You have not done a feasibility study of the market in that country. So what happens? You go, you set up, you almost think you know. And how do we do businesses, particularly in Africa? You go and you say, Lenny is doing so well in Rwanda. I am going there. I have to go and study Lenny. You don't know how Lenny got into that business. You never studied. The other thing is, I remember, you go to school, you learn about pestel, political, socio-economic, and you cram those things. And you go and you write them on paper. Let me tell you, those things are real. Anybody who is sitting now and is looking at the global economics and how things are moving, I know people who had a sole client, as you said.
Yes.
You can imagine what is happening to their business. Now they have shut down, they have no revenues coming in. Then also, don't jump for every client because you're scaling. I jumped on a client. I set up my own contact center, and I jumped into a into a client who was from abroad, first world. And they started outsourcing with me. Let me tell you, they would pay 3-4 months after. So I'm bearing the cost of payroll, or the cost of running the business. My office rent, I had to move from the office I was expanded so that I could accommodate this client. I'm telling you, all I got was bad branding. Because these kids will say, she does not pay. Where does she take the money? This is an international company. She's lying. They have been paid. So these are some of the lessons, and I think I'll give it back to you, Mike, because I can talk for a day. About scaling the business and the challenges and entrepreneurship.
Me, first of all, I've just been. I think you're a good storyteller. I'm just smiling. Because everything you say, I can relate. Yeah. But something else you've said interesting, which adds to some of the episodes we talked about, is the issue of the people network that you have. Your network is a double-edged sword. It works, and sometimes can work against you. So it's knowing how to build that network. But also, my hope, and part of why we are doing this, and we have talked about it, is there could be somebody today in your position, Pauline, previously, 20 years ago, who today is sitting on a decision. For a founder who they just require that opportunity to become the next big thing. Is that correct? Yes. That guy will choose to give that transaction to somebody else, and you ask them why, they'll justify all risks possible. Some of the people who helped me scale, to be honest, I never ever had dinner with them. I never sat with them for breakfast. I never did lunch with them. They just said, you're good at what you do. I will support you. And that also brings us to the next conversation around how do you own your story? But also amongst ourselves here, it's a question I'd like to open the floor and just maybe raise questions to Peter and ask Peter, how did you survive that one? Questions that, somebody else somewhere there is willing to ask, but they're not here, right? Me, I've got a few questions. First of all, I would like to sort of look at, I'd maybe just as I may start with Peter, and maybe even I'll come to you. The insurance industry, when you look at healthcare, healthcare in a market like this is basically a loss-making business.
It is.
And if they sit, and very few, I think, unless companies that have taken healthcare independently out, one or two, that are profitable. You chase the same customers. Yes. Today, one guy says, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the largest customer. You get that customer so long as they have cash flow for this year. You just hope have the largest customer. Yeah. But essentially, a lot of healthcare business is being subsidized by other general insurance business. Insurance business is old money.
It is.
I don't know anybody who tell me this insurance is not old money. The insurance sector. Maybe I think you keep a lot of money, then you decide I'm going to set up insurance. Maybe that's how it goes. How did you expect? How do you expect to compete with old money?
Yes.
Become a dominant player with old money in an industry you knew was loss-making.
Right.
Okay. What would you have done differently? If you're told relive your story today with what you know, how would you have done it?
My success was built on being different. First of all, insurance companies were very poor at branding. They still are. I created a brand and I made it a lifestyle brand. I would still do the same thing if I was to go back to insurance. Resolution Insurance it was Resolution Health then, became a lifestyle brand that people want to associate with. I personified my business to be a young lady, professional, either in advertising, law, or banking, lives in Kileleshwa, drives a RAV4. That time a RAV4 was a good car. Reads, there was that magazine called Miss, where she goes to do her hair. I could describe the brand and personification to the T, how much she earns, what she does. So for obvious reasons, I decided I will never behave like an insurance company. The colors that we even put. Where we position our brand is used to be where people are feeling good in sports, in music. If you come and tell me, sponsor diabetic work, absolutely not. I don't want to associate my business with illnesses, even though I'm doing it. So you have to be intentional of how you position the brand. Remember, I had worked in the industry for a long time, so I knew you have to take care of women. You know, gynecological conditions were never covered until I came into the industry.
Wow.
Maternity, HIV/AIDS. I designed the first HIV/AIDS program, and in the industry was just talking, this guy, he cannot last. There is no way he can last. And then the how. How do you execute? Okay? Insurance salespeople are people you have to bang doors from them. And remember, insurance is never, it's a push business, not a pull business. Don't run an ad and next people are going to call you. You still need a person to go and sell. So I decided I am not going to go to the market and recruit people from the industry. I'm going to create my own sales team. Teachers was my easiest one. Teachers have a way of communicating a product. So I went to the market and recruited teachers and trained them. And I decided I'm going to create, I'll be alone, I'll be different in this market. Of course, you know, you launch a product, imitation comes, undercutting of price. But something that Pauline has said about never burning your bridges. Of course, majority of the customers that I converted were clients I had served with my employer's life. Okay. Then I also realized I have to lead. So you develop a product, someone will copy you. So you keep developing and designing and understanding what's happening in the market. And it worked. It worked. So I would do it the same way. Please note, I already knew about the loss-making angle. So I didn't come with a market penetration price. I was the most expensive. And when you're more expensive than the market, you have also to give value, either perceived or real value. So I already knew I would rather, my position was very, for every dollar you pay me, you get more benefits than everybody else, right? And I made it a profitable business for that particular reason. I could charge fees, which are outside of insurance, you get. One of the big manufacturing entities in this market, I approached them and they told me, look, our headache is not actually risk transfer, we have the money, it's the service. What do we do? I told them, let me set up clinics for you. So I went to campuses and set up clinics. So my profits actually didn't come traditionally from insurance, it came from the other services that we offered. And that's why we were attractive to impact investors, because we went into areas where insurance companies didn't want to go. Then I built a brand. And investors, when they come to your office, they want to understand how do people engage with this brand. The second thing that investors want to see is your governance structures. Even though I started a company that I controlled, I brought in the independent chairman. I was negotiating my own salary for a business that I own with an independent person who had never come from insurance, was an engineer. I had to be comfortable with discomfort, okay? Because I always had that gut issue. I had an uncle who had started an insurance company that had failed. I knew there were many. A company called MediPlus, that time was a trending company. And I'm being told, even colors munafanana, you will end up in the same direction. So if I was to go back, I'll do it exactly the same. Brand, make sure that I focus on the brand and then the how that I execute. Because you don't want to go to an industry and become also me and also run. And who too needs another insurance company? So you want to be different. And that's the same thing that I've done with my other businesses, to ensure that I'm thinking with the end in mind. Back to the issue of legacy. Remember I spoke earlier. Deciding whether you're doing this to sell and cash out and go to the sunset, or you're building a business for legacy. I was very clear that I was building to sell. When you're talking about trust fund now, the businesses that I'm building, I'm doing it for legacy. Hopefully, my progeny will come into the business. They're still not in the business. They'll come into the business and they'll grow it and maybe scale in their own different ways, and make sure that I'm there as chairman guiding them on what we shouldn't do. Would I go back to the same industry? No. I would never start a health insurance company again. Done that, writing a book, people are engaging with. I'm almost done with one of the books. So I'm doing 2 books. I'm doing my memoirs and I'm writing about my business life. And I've taken a position of talking about the bad, the dirty, the ugly. Because entrepreneurs talk about successes. In fact, most of the time I'm called for podcasts, I say, you're going to ask me about how I made $1 billion shillings. That's not the conversation. It is the broken marriage, me not spending time with my children. It is when banks are not talking to you. Oh, by the way, I've gone full circle. Before bank CEOs used to come to my office and see me. And most of the times we were discussing interest rates on my deposits. After what happened, whenever I go to a bank, it has to go to a department that I didn't know called compliance. Check where this guy is taking this money. So I found that because I'm no longer taking money from, I do commercial debts now. But it's so hard. Oh, it's so hard. You find a credit manager who you taught I used to teach. And you can tell by his body language, this guy will not approve this deal. And you've done everything right. Your cash flows are okay. The business proof of concept is there. Until I realized that there's a department that is in the banking is called compliance. They Google, they check your socials. Kama kulikuwa na scandal, you are claiming a table in Carnival. That's what we used to do when we were younger. That alone, the fact that you are dancing and you are seen drunk somewhere. No, this guy is a bad risk. In that time, you're dancing with your customer who's going to pay you 200 million shillings. So you need to be very careful that you have to understand who your audience is. And guys, you do not own your business. The business owns you, your customer owns you, your bank owns you. You have to be comfortable with that situation. All of us sitting here, by the way, are going through a battle, an entrepreneurship battle. Yeah. Last night, I've lost a business where I was the cheapest. I ticked everything on the tender. And the guy on the other table is my friend, the guy approving. I just got, my GM sent me a text message from Chairman, we've just lost this. It was a business that we were sure we were going to get. Today I'm going to look for my pal and ask him, what really happened? Okay. You may just find that someone there just doesn't like you. And you have to be comfortable with it. That's business. So I did things right, but there are many, many lessons. Should I have set it as a legacy business? Absolutely. I should never have built the business to sell. Second, should I have sold to the party I sold to? No. And I still remember, I was in a rugby stadium in Dubai watching a game Kenya was playing. And then my transaction advisor calls me. I told my transaction advisor, I'm selling 15%. I'm looking for liquidity. He tells me, I've just met a founder. This founder does not want to be a minority. Have you ever considered giving away control? I said, let me think about it. I watched rugby. The next day on a Sunday, my people went to watch the game. I stayed in a hotel room and I just thought. And I did the simplest thing. I took a piece of paper, pros and cons. I said, you've run this business for 14 years. You have built a brand. Maybe to go to the next level, you need people with better money, better experience, who the legacy still came. That one day you are not part of the business, but the business is growing. So when I flew back earlier, left my people in Dubai, came back to Nairobi, and we went to a hotel, and I meet these guys. First of all, I was negotiating with a guy half my age, okay? And he's the one who's controlling the agenda. The guy had never run a business. He's an associate of a founder. And my gut kept telling me. I remember my lawyer. We step out to have a break. We're negotiating. And she's telling me, Peter, are you sure it's time? Okay. Are you sure it's time? But my greed, because the money was good. My greed was telling me, yeah, it's the right time. I'd never seen that kind of money before. I've never thought one day an idea could be converted to billions of shillings. And people want to pay me. You know, we all have imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And now it's my imposter syndrome is more enhanced because once you fail in one thing, what you are going through,
Yes.
a corporate, where you have a corporate card which is unlimited, you can buy a car with it. And then you wake up one day and you have no fuel in your vehicle. You are going to banks to beg them to support your idea. That's entrepreneurship, and it's the discomfort. You have to be comfortable. Mike you spoke about your shower issue. My therapist trained me recently that one of my weaknesses is I borrow grief from the future. Something has not happened. So I'm doing a business. The business plan looks okay. I'm looking for a reason why it won't work myself. Then, I start the business because you start doubting yourself. And you start thinking, maybe in 7 months we are going to run out of cash. And all the things you worry about will never turn out about your worry. They may turn out trouble, but a bit different. So there I am. I'm thinking as an entrepreneur, I've been successful. I have made people money. In fact, for me, what makes me sleep well at night is my investors got a yield. And I see what they have built with that money. And I say, okay, at least this business was worth something. It hurts me that I created a brand and in my bid to fulfill my greed of selling it and getting cash at that particular time, and I was still very young, I was still in my 40s, I ended up sacrificing my employees. I meet them, who I left with those guys. Some of them did very well, some of them did very badly. And I still get joy when I meet a doctor somewhere who tells me, if you ever decide to go back to insurance, please remember me. When I meet someone who tells me, kuna rumor you are going back to the insurance industry, please, I'm coming to work for you. It tells me that I knew what I was doing, I did the right thing, and I created followers without realizing. So, my biggest headache today is what you're going to pitch. Mostly I'm pitching to brand managers. Most of these brand managers are my daughter's age. 23, 24-year-old brand manager who's making a decision to spend 100 million. We're activating for a brand, or we are doing a product launch. And I walk into that boardroom, and sometimes I walk out and sit in my car and ask myself, is this it? That I came to this world to create brands and pay taxes? Is this it? And it is. That's what entrepreneurship is. You have to be comfortable with discomfort, and that I have to keep repeating. Don't romanticize it. My journey of paying back is to tell people the truth about entrepreneurship. It's not sexy. It is not romantic. The process is tough. The results are taken by other people. It's either your investor, it's KRA, okay? It's your family. And a lot of people do not want to talk about that. We don't talk about that discomfort. Like your story there. I used to admire you, Pauline. I used to see you and think, it's a star, Bana. It's a star. I would like to be like. But I didn't know about that pain. Mike, I used to give Mike as an example. He's tall like me. He's made a lot of money. When his government thing collapsed, I just thought. I called Mike. Back when he told me that I'm trying something different, I called him and I told him, I'm not sure you can even remember, what are the lessons? And you are you propagated your gospel very well, Mike. You've always said, de-risk. Don't allow yourself to be owned by a customer. Okay. And all of us have gone through, we've gone through that. So until the universe takes me, that's what I'm doing. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't think I can do anything else good to great. I see opportunities. I still go into it in spite of the number of failures. Because I was just learning. I set up an airline when everyone was telling me, don't go to an airline. Failed. And I've been sued by people, and I've had very tough times with that. I went to manufacturing. Also me, what you said, you probably can't remember. I went to manufacturing in the mid-2000s, and I had 39 SKUs of doing shampoos and whatever. And to be honest, I went into that business because Kenodia had sold his business.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So making the same mistakes where you open a kayak because your buddy has opened a kayak. And I failed. I failed in it. Success comes from many failures. All of us here are sitting on stories of failures, stories of hubris. You made a decision. Everyone told you, all data told you you're going in the wrong direction. So you are stuck. We've all been stars in our careers. So you go ahead with it. And you just reach that valley and you find yourself sitting there thinking, you have to dust yourself up. What do you do? You're not going to die. You dust yourself up, go to the next gig. So what we are doing today, I need to thank you for this. We have to arm the people behind us with this knowledge that our entrepreneurs, I really used to admire, I wouldn't name them, these top old money guys, they never told us. If they had sat with us and told us, this is what you should consider, then we would have done better. And there is no business school that will ever teach. Business school is theory. You have to go to the trenches. So I hope I've answered your question in a long, roundabout way.
No, I think it's great the way you've elaborated. And as you talked about mentors, and now we are becoming mentors.
Yes.
There's one person who really, I think, helped me, who never told me, don't give up or don't fear to scale. You know, I had a very good mentor called James Gashui. You remember James?
I remember, yeah.
Very sad that people who are such visionary die early.
He died
the guys
so
who are
early.
crazy here that stay so many years. You know, with so much disaster they make for us. But the good guys, I don't know why they go early. And for me, I think when I used to tell him I'm going to Rwanda, he would say, let me take you. He takes me. He says, you know, I used to be in France. I used to work with Kaberuka.
Yes.
I know him. Let me go and talk to him. No, he just goes, Michael, let's go to the meeting. Imagine the guy leaves what he's doing. He goes for meet Rwanda for 3 days.
He believed in you.
Just sits with me. He takes me, let's go see somebody else. Not because he's lobbying for me. He just wants to open the doors without saying anything. I tell him, you know, I need to get a project at KRA. He tells me, I appreciate because idea, even though the chairman and the CEO is my friend, I'd rather you go yourself. But sometimes, not everybody I know will support me. So where I end up, go improve yourself. So I guess part of it is also mentoring. I think that I have responsibility to mentor others. So today, it's such a natural instinct for me to help other people scale. I sit in a few companies as advisory board, and I'm really finding, I'm helping them join the dots. Why? I'm just thinking, my effort, significant little bit of effort, or some effort is making such a big movement for these guys.
Right.
Now I understand. I get it. These are not people I know. They're not my kids. They're not relatives. It's just people who are smart, disciplined, and moving things through. And that also then brings us to that conversation. Lenny, you know, Lenny, you're in media. You know, Pauline and Peter and myself have gone through that chaos where I open and see a blogger saying, you know, this business might go for $50 million or whatever. It is because of X, Y, Z. I read the story. I say, what is this business? I am driving my son to school. My driver is there. Then, you know, I'm coming to Peponi. There's an intersection, you know. And then there's a gutter press. I see my face, headline, like this. I say, So I ignore. You know how you sit in Bele? You ignore. You turn like this after 1 kilometer, the son tells you, he's young. Imagine it's maybe 7 years, 8 years. He tells you, Baba, I saw your face. Why haven't you bought the newspaper? You say, I tell him, no, forget, that's just story. Then by the time he comes in the evening, his classmates have told him the story.
Yeah.
But how do they know the story? The parents of other kids were in traffic. They saw the story, they bought the newspaper. Between where they bought the newspaper to the school, the parents have already discussed, Mike never did. And I realized, I have to own this story because who's going to own the story for you? The blogger, your competition who has put, now today for 100,000, you can put anything in there,
of course,
in the press. So one thing I would like to know from you, how, especially from your experience, how do you manage brand? Because founder, at the end of the day, you raise money as a founder because of your reputation.
Yes.
You go to Europe, you Google, they find your name there. You have to start explaining. I think for me now, what I do before I start any investor meeting, I first tell my story.
Yes.
I say, this is what happened, this is where we are, this is where we are. Even for me, the decision to go and sue government was not even because of money. I don't even care about that money. It was just my name was bigger than this Maneno. Is that correct?
Right.
To show, because I can't be fighting with somebody in government who canceled my project. Now she's no longer in government. She owns the story, what she says and what they say.
Yes.
And yet, they don't understand the disaster they made in my life, right?
Yes.
So you have to own the story moving forward. So for you being in media, how would you advise us and founders there, when things go wrong, how do you own your story? Part of it is being in a platform like this.
Yes.
How do you make sure that you don't remain in a cocoon and own the story? Would you probably give us insights? And maybe has your business maybe even got to a point where you start helping people like us founders manage our own brands? Yes, you're helping big brands manage brands. What about us? How do you help us manage our brands?
Great question. The first thing I would tell anyone, if you want to put yourself out there as the head of your corporation or as the face of your brand, have a professional team that you can fall back on to manage any fallout. anything negative or anything positive. You need that. You know, unfortunately, as you said, we have a lot of hubris. We get to a point where we start drinking our own Kool-Aid. We believe that we're just the guys.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, and you believe you can do anything. But it's always great to have a professional team that you can fall back on. You don't have to have them fully employed at the time or anything, but identify people who you can work with whenever anything goes wrong so that they can manage your image. And in today's world, it is so critical because, as you say, bad news goes around the world before good news gets out of bed. So you have to have people who are actually looking out for this and actively managing your reputation and your image. Because as you rightly say, before any meeting nowadays, people, the first thing they do is Google you. They go to LinkedIn, then they go on to other search engines just to find out what it is about you and everything. So you have to find a way to get people to manage that for you. So there's even ways in which you can make sure that the good things about you appear above the bad things. Because in search engines, no one goes to page 2.
That's true.
Nobody goes to page 2.
Page 1.
Yeah.
See you.
So it's very important to do that. And the second thing I would say is have a very conscious view of you as a founder, what your role is and what the role of the company is. And if you want those two to go together or do you want them to be separate? Some people like Richard Branson. He's always going to be associated with Virgin doing all the outlandish things he does. But there are other people who you'll probably never hear of. But the company is very in people's faces. So you can also decide, I'm going to stay in the background and let the company's name be the one that is out there. So that also shields you from a lot of personal attacks. So for example, like if I was to ask anyone, do you even know who's the global CEO of a company like Procter & Gamble?
Actually, no.
You can't tell.
Cannot tell.
You don't know.
But a consumer-led product, let me just 1 second. A consumer-led product and a business-to-business-led product has a different conversation.
That's true.
If I'm selling a product and it's mass market, people don't have to know. But if I'm selling you, for instance, Lenny, I doubt there's no corporate that you work with that doesn't know you.
That is true, and that is one of the things that I have had to consciously start changing. Because even like you look at McKinsey or Bain Consulting, do you have to know the CEO?
Because now they are many years later.
Yeah, their reputation goes before them.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. So we have to start consciously building the reputations of our companies for excellence in our fields so that the reputation outlives you as a founder. And I like what the discussion we're having about legacy business. That is how now the business becomes a legacy. The business has its own reputation that is not tied to the founder. So for too long, we as founders, we end up being the public face of the company. But we have to start building that image of the company consciously and building that brand so that it stands on its own. So that even after you've faded into the background, or even if you say you're going to sell or whatever, the company stands on its own. And that is something that I'm also struggling with at the moment, and something that I'm actively working towards to ensure now that the name Saracen will outlive me and outlive us, the founders and the business partners, and continue to the future. And there's a clear brand that we've put around the Saracen name. This is what we want the brand to stand for, and that's what we're going to continue building.
I think, Mike, also to his point, you talked about hubris. And I think one of the things that we fail in as entrepreneurs is we believe in ourselves too much, particularly when we have succeeded. When you've not succeeded, you're very quiet. You're actually pushing the name of your company. But when you walk in now and you're like, I am the Michael. I am the Pauline. So I think it is really also an ego thing that we, particularly for us with our African business, is to learn consciously to separate, like Lenny is saying, that your success perhaps is on something else. And I know you had asked me, like, one of the things that I hear from founders when I'm consulting, it is really thinking you are a monopoly of everything. You maybe are a very good business developer. And that is why your business is prospering. It may be you create very good product, but perhaps your people's skills are very wanting. So it is good to associate a brand with its own resources, its own the way whatever it is that is selling, whether it is consumer, whether it's in it is B2B or even B2G, whatever it is you're doing, you need to quietly start stepping back. Just like the way age is telling us, start stepping back. And that is why we're here, Mike. If we were 20s, we would not be giving stories. We would be like, I don't want my story to be shared. Exactly. But today you can be able to say, that is my company. But personally, these are the challenges and the mistakes that I made.
Yeah. But also, then that brings us to a little bit of a controversial question, or not. Maybe I would like you guys to think about it. We all build our businesses. Peter, when you used to come and walk through my business, it was in a time when the political regime then encouraged significant level of innovation.
Correct.
We were not traders. It pushed us. We came from, I remember it was between 2003 and around 2012, my business grew 700%. I came from a business that could do 100 million to 2 billion within 10 years. That's a lot.
Yes.
And I remember I would get projects from NSSF. I never knew anybody at the board. KPLC, I never knew anybody at the board. I would do transactions with big brands. I told Safaricom, I never knew anybody at the board which board. People just gave me business because I was good at what I did. So we came from that evolution where it was be the best at what you are. Then we came to the next evolution, which is the next regime, which things are changing. It's who you know somehow. It is who you know, who is your, I don't know, godfather. Somehow that is a very chaotic area that we all went through. Is that correct?
Yes.
Who controls, who is the biggest, who is not. You cannot be too big. Who are you? Then now we are in a different regime, which also now I feel is a little bit transactional.
A little bit?
We're in a very transactional ecosystem, right? Where it's not what you build. It's really almost like what you can transact.
Correct.
So now, me, I'm like confused. Because you've got from build for the country. Then, I don't know where we are in the middle, somewhere, something, I don't know what happened in that regime. Then now we're in a regime of transactional. But then I think, in between 2003 and 2015, because of being a Kenyan, I would go to Zambia, I pitch for a project. People would just say, 7 seats from Kenya. Kenya is very up ahead.
Exactly.
Those ones, I would, just by fact as a Kenyan company, I would be ahead of the queue.
Correct.
It's amazing. I'll go to Rwanda, just because I was ahead. I go to MTN Uganda. I'm ahead of a queue. Just your Kenyan brand gave you political support just because you're ahead, right? I go to Nigeria, remember, I say, Kenyans, you guys are very smart. So as a matter of fact, I found East African, South African countries, not South Africa. Nigeria, they play above. They look at Kenyans, okay, what can you do? Unless you are South Africans, but other markets, Egypt, okay, who are you? So I found it easier doing business. So what do you think is going to happen moving forward to companies that, since we become very transactional, what's going to be the future in the next 20 years? What is happening? I've given you a 15, not actually more, 2003 to 2023. That's almost 20 years, and you've seen what has happened. What do you think is going to happen in the next 20 years? Because you have become very transactional.
The younger businesses have to be politically agnostic.
And how do you do that? Let's give people practical conversations.
It is difficult because, A, you're regulated. The tax regime has completely changed. Politicians are back in business. During the Kibaki regime, they stayed away from you. There are many times you have to have night meetings. If someone tells you I want 20% of your business, for protection. And in addition, you need to pay me X amount of money per month. And then you just wonder, I am building a business, I'm raising capital to serve you. So, but they don't go to unsuccessful businesses. So sometimes you need to keep your businesses from the limelight. You may have to. Then, for me, I advise on the governance side, make your chairman, maybe get an ex-CS or an ex government person, so you don't want PEP.
But then you have your
PEP. No, but maybe who has retired. There are many politicians who left, or people who, like my mentor who has also the chairman of my business, Dr. Steve Mainda. A lot of people don't know him, but he's been in that space. He's ran in the national housing. He's a seasoned entrepreneur, seasoned governance expert. There are people of that nature. So if I want to maneuver the corridors of government, he's able to help me. But he's not a politician. He's not PEP. He's not exposed. You just have to navigate. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all in how to deal with government. I avoid doing B2G business. But you know why? Because of you. It's a lesson. I just thought, I'm not going to design my business to be sustained by government and the whims of it. And then you stay 90 days, 120 days without being paid, sometimes a year without being paid. So you have to build businesses that are agnostic to the regime of the day. Okay? Then pivot at any single time. You know, the first time I've gotten an assessment from KRA is when I'm older. Because before, you used to do calculates, you sit with your account manager, with KRA, you sort out where you can sort out, you have a payment plan. But now today, I think I get an assessment every quarter because I'm in different businesses. And it's always onerous. You're going for ADR. So the tax is what it is. But you can be actually political agnostic. You can decide.
Well, what do you think? Interesting, because it's sad that you've said that you don't do business in government because of people like me. And I've met very many people who use me as a case study of why not to do business with government with a long-term view.
Yes.
And I find it quite sad when somebody tells me, I just want to trade. I get my thing, I dash out. Mm-hmm. But the projects I was going to do with government was going to connect me to government in a very long time, because you're building a national healthcare system,
yes,
which even now you can see they're building, the way it's difficult it is, because people don't realize it's a career calling. For you to build a national health platform for a country, it's a career, let me tell you.
Yes.
You do nothing else for 20 years for that country apart from that project.
Right.
You can't do anything else. You understand what I mean?
Understand.
It is the only thing you can do in your life if you decide to do that.
Yes.
So for me, it's almost like somebody comes and says, I'll never touch government again. Me, I know from your experience, the best is to touch and go. So touch and go doesn't mean they're going to do the right thing. Touch and mean, let me maximize my extraction from government as much as I can, which is really what I'm saying. It's a whole change of conversation, because you're coming from where you said, what is it I can do for my country based on my capacity and knowledge, right? Now it is, how much can I take and dash? These are two different conversations. That to me is my saddest moment in my turning 50 next week, asking myself, how did I get here where people are so cynical, they're not willing to help their country. They're willing to just grab and go. For me, that's a very sad situation for the next generation. And trying to understand how they're going to move, because the country won't grow unless you grow. We can't say the only contractor is a Chinese contractor. The only me, when I was growing, there was Kenyatta construction, there was whatever, there was nothing. Now I ask myself, who is the contractor? This housing project, who is doing? Doing nani? Yes. So the question is to you guys: how, if your children are going to do business tomorrow, and some of them, your daughter who is 28, your child has just graduated school, Lenny, you know where we are with kids. What are you going to tell them? And when they want to jump into business, that's the question. What are you going to tell them? Just go and innovate and figure out, can you really operate in business without government? Because they also play a role in regulatory.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe launch a product that requires regulatory approval. How are you going to operate? And then somebody also wants 20% in it. How do you manage and how do you grow? Do you tell them to go and scale up in a market where, this is another thing. Maybe as a foreigner, you go to South Africa, maybe they also got their own challenges in terms of you as how do you manage when the world is becoming more open? Okay, but at the same time, the world is also saying, come to America with $5 million, I give you a golden visa. So does that mean when you make $5 million, when you should have invested here, you're going to go to America? Or they're going to take the money you've left them and go to America? What do you think is going to happen? Anyway. I don't think there's an answer. It's just you throw it in the air.
I don't have the answers, but I think, number one, you're very right. what he's saying is that we are afraid of doing business with government because you're sure that is the easiest way to go broke. Because you'll not be paid, you're going to have a long, long process. And I think for us, when we sit here and have this conversation, we are starting to open what many people are not talking about. We are not talking about it. We only look at Mike, we gossip behind the scenes and say, did you see what happened to Mike? You see, so we are never addressing the challenge. And what I'd say is that the first thing is we address the challenge like we're addressing it. Number two, let's look at what policies need to be put in place. And there are no other, there's a time we say, when you're growing up, when you're younger, when you're 25, you see older people going for, Russia, those things. Yes. And then you realize one day in 2 minutes, I'll call it 2 minutes, yes. You wake up and you're like, we are the ones going for those things. Look at it.
And every other 2 weeks or
yes.
1 month, you're in a mchango.
Yes, and you don't even know the songs. And the reality now, we are the people to challenge the policies that are set in place. And I really congratulate you, Mike. Going to court and taking government to court is no mean feat. It is about courage. That we must have the courage to face these situations as they come so that we are not just, what are those entrepreneurs? Yeah. You go, you are paid because you know somebody, you pay half the money because the person has to pay you, and you have to pay them to even get the traders. These are the things that we need to stand up and say, let us be courageous. I think Gen Z has taught us that we need to stop hiding. The proverbial ostrich, which I hear does not even hide in the sand, but we still always use that. We need to actually stand up and say, like I think yesterday I had a conversation with my son, and it's a case of where you're now telling him, this is how business is. And now the younger generation is aware of the effects of the political situations. And it's not just in Kenya, it's global. It's global. You're seeing how many, like now, even being in government, how much dollars has Elon Musk lost in his businesses?
A few billion.
Yes. Billions. And we were admiring during the day of inauguration and saying, look at the techpreneurs.
Behind them.
Yeah, behind. This is where.
In 1 month.
Yes. 1 month, I don't think they're the happiest of the lot.
But I think they'll make it back.
Yes, they'll make it back. And that is the story. Mike, when I met you and we had a conversation, there's a statement you said and we laughed together. And we said, no matter what circumstances we go through in this, entrepreneur journey, we'll be back. And we go down, your business tanks, you've lost a big order that you were hopeful that was going to change a few things. But today you're here. And I think I alluded to that. And this is the thing that you're telling the younger generation. It's not going to be smooth. I've told you, I'm also writing a book. You know what the title is? Unashamed. Why? Because everybody wants to hear Pauline Warui. Then she went to corporate. And then she rose. Yeah. And she rose. And then she opened a business. And then she rose and rose and rose. Where? The tears.
Yes.
Nobody knows the tears. The banks following you. Yeah. I was heavily mortgaged when I left employment. Why? Because I believed in myself so much. I am not the girl you fire. I'm the girl you hire. So how would I not be able to pay my mortgages? Yet I am supposed to be in employment. Whatever I touch turns to gold. This is what we believe. And these are the stories that we need to look at. So we are telling our children, even when you are going for that government business, you need to do a feasibility study. Don't also get caught up in the quick money. Entrepreneurship is not about quick money. Yes, you're afraid you make quick money. But unless, I talked about the story of the engineer, until you build the foundation, I'm telling you, there's nothing called deal. Deal itakuja, but the deal will slay you. It will burn you. Because it will also put you in a lifestyle that you are not accustomed to, and that will actually even deplete what you have invested. For me, that would be what I would tell a younger person.
Interesting you've mentioned. I don't know. I bought a building as a business on Riverside.
Yes.
My dream, it is silly, but in 2013, 12 when I bought the building, I was not even 40 with a business. I remember convincing my shareholders, let's build a building. In my other business, we had the same business, 7 Seas. We're in 4 floors. Is it 4 floors on Westland? So we decided, let's buy a building, okay, on Riverside. You know, there's also this wishful thinking. You go to New York, you go to Nairobi, you go see there, ICA Bank, you go see somewhere, I don't know. Then you think, even me now, I think I've reached a point where we can build a building, buy a building, 4 floors, and put your logo up there.
Yes.
You know, if you ask me, I should never have bought that building. In multiple dimensions. One, it creates significant envy.
Yes.
True, it's keep it up with the Joneses.
Yes.
You're thinking, even me, I need a building. Today, it's one of the things I ask myself, like, why did I ever buy this building, right? It took me significant courage. One day to just say, I'm going to rent this building out. You know, first you furnish it amazingly.
Yes.
Then one day I just said, why am I even keeping this building? So recently, I just said, I'm going to rent out this building fully. What I do with it, however they demolish the partitions, what I did, doesn't matter to me. Is that correct? Finally did it. Which was a decision I took 4 years to make. So I lost 4 years of revenue, and then bill is also mortgage. So you also have constantly, you're there with the bank, negotiating. This interest is rising. Kila kitu. The ones who owe you money, you have to sue them again for them to pay you the money they owe you. Imagine, you have to sue them, number 2, for them to pay you what they owe you. It's not like on the other side, you also have significant challenges, people pushing you. So sometimes I ask myself, what's the true price for scaling? If I had remained in like a small office on Westlands, scaled, maybe I would have remained like that guy in where they know those very, very wealthy entrepreneurs who sell beans.
And
Where is that place?
The
They used to sell beans. The guy has a shop in downtown Nairobi. He sells maybe tons of beans. Do you even know him? Does he have a logo there in his building? So maybe sometimes I think, are we jaded? Is it a jaded thinking? And am I saying that somebody should not do that? I'm not saying people. I think people should aspire and do that. We should not look at my story and say that you should not do it. I think we should do it. I think it's just that underlying your underlying risks and also being pragmatic that we are the way we are. We still got a little bit of scarcity mentality. Where should you excel? And why should I allow you to excel? You know, is this crabs in a barrel kind of mentality? But moving on into the next conversation is what do we need to do? Because I think we have to scale businesses. We need businesses. How many businesses do you know, Kenyan businesses do you know that are in South Africa? How many do you know? How many Kenyan banks have even ventured to Nigeria? Zero.
None.
They can't.
Zero.
Nigeria is too big for them. It's the intimidation factor as a Kenyan bank to go to Nigeria is too much. How many Nigerian banks are in Kenya?
Like 5, 6.
I've just seen a Nigerian bank buy a South African bank. Yeah? Nigerian banks against us. So the Nigerians have reached a point where they've said, Africa, we are going to conquer it. Is that correct? Egyptians bank, banks from Morocco are in?
They're here.
Are in here. But us, how many markets? We go to markets that we feel we are bigger than them. But markets that are bigger than us, we get scared.
Right.
But yeah, that's why we need to cut our capability. Because I think as Kenyans, we have depth. If you go look at a bank in Kenya, their banking system, they have more depth in terms of capability, right? But you go to banks in Nigeria, because I've been there, you find they are massive, 600 branches.
Yes.
But they don't have, the technology is wanting. So they lack that depth, right? But why can they go to those markets, right? That's one of the things we need to ask ourselves. And what businesses do we think can take us to those markets? I think tech-led businesses can take us to those markets. So I think we need to encourage our kids to think about tech-led lending businesses that can live here and go to those markets. Any business that can go through boundaries. So even a regulatory framework, they should give us a significant level of headway to allow us to innovate in our own markets, to be able to scale in those global markets. But closing, what do you think are some of the takeaways that you'd encourage your daughters and sons and the next generation, even people in our own area struggling? You know, sometimes being founders, entrepreneurs is not an age thing. Somebody your age also who is trying to do what you're trying to do 7 years ago, about to get shafted Same way. Is that correct? Or about to make the same mistake like me,
that you
buy a building to put their logo up there. Hey, okay. Because you think you're going to use that building as an asset collateral, which, who is buying buildings? We don't even know how it works. So what are the things we need to take? What are your takeaways? And what are some of the things you need to encourage the next generation to think as you scale? What are some of the areas you think that are not in your typical textbook that you'd advise in your own areas, entrepreneurs moving forward? Because you have to leave people with hope. We still have to build global businesses. Is that correct? What are some of the things that you'd say they can look out for?
Okay. The first thing is growth doesn't have to be organic. You can grow by acquisition. So tested, go into partnership, or raise capital on the back of an acquisition, leverage it. So that's one of the things that as Kenyan business we haven't considered. You don't have to go to do a greenfield in your growth path. Bring in other people, or like-minded, and grow, scale by acquiring, or scale by franchising. Because that's another one. Franchise your business, your processes, transfer to someone else, let them run the business. Those are the areas. Because sometimes in business, we do a 5-year strategy, and in there, scaling is there. Sometimes we scale for the sake of scaling. Okay? So you start draining cash flows that you're generating from your core business that is doing very well, like you did in Rwanda. And there are other opportunities. Yeah, put your brand, go identify an agency in Rwanda. Give it, apply your brand there, your processes. Take minority. Don't have to have control. Take minority. Those are some of the things I would ask businessmen to consider than just going on opening branches. The people who acquired one of my businesses for me, they moved from a 3-branch business to a 40-branch business. In 2 years. Of course, the foundations will crack. So, slow to send. Be slow to send. In terms of, even when you decide it's time that I scale, do your homework, pay school fees. Okay? But also consider alternatives way of scaling, so franchising and growth by acquisition.
That's a great idea, because one of the things also in my current business we're doing, we realized that we're great technology builders, and what also we are doing is white labeling our platform. You build technology, you say Kenyans, we are good at building tech, but for instance, I would think M-Pesa would have grown further if they had white labeled. If M-Pesa had white labeled their platform, they would be maybe in all our markets in Africa. Most telcos would have maybe said, I'm not going to build an M-Pesa platform. I'm going to white label, and then they would have been earning royalties from all the markets. Today, maybe they've only gone in Africa to 2 markets or 3. I don't know how many they've got. So white labeling may be the way to go if you're building technology platforms as you go along. So that's a good thing, because it can take you, you can white label a platform. Today I've got customers, for instance, we talk to in Asia, we talk to in South America, who can take our platform and run with it, because it's their own platform. They own the foot on the ground in terms of people who are going to execute. They can co-brand it themselves. You own the back office, because today I see guys using Oracle here, surely.
Yes.
Me, I used to, not Oracle or any other products. I used to sit there for 20 years. I built, when some of the brands are not even known here, most of those American companies. I used to kill myself. Imagine.
Yes.
Train people, I pay. Send guys overseas, I pay. Come and hire salaries, I pay. And then I'm representing a brand. The moment the brand becomes dominant, because of us, guess what happens?
They come here.
Set
up an office.
And they hire my employees, who I train from zero. So I ask myself, hey, what happened here? Mike, where we are managing risk. I say, how is this possible? So I realized this cannot be my end game. I can start with them, but at some point we have to build our own intellectual property. So my hope is that even ourselves in our new regime, as we are moving, the next regimes and our regimes where we are, we have to start looking at intellectual property, Kenya as a market, where you register intellectual property, not where they bully you. Eventually what happens, if you become very successful, where are you going to keep your IP?
That's beyond.
You start thinking, hey, maybe I should keep my IP in Mauritius, maybe I should keep my IP in Ghana, maybe I should keep it in the US.
Yes.
Why? So we also need to realize that wealth in knowledge is going to go away from us if we're not careful. Is that correct? What are some of your takeaways?
Well, I think for me, when I look at it, is to scale, do what you love also. Because sometimes you want to do a business just because it's being done. You'll never be able to scale up on something you don't know. So it is good, even though you don't know it, please continue learning. Mike has also talked about those legal frameworks. You go, you sign up with big organizations, but you never look at the dots. You never look at those dots. You will never scale, because every time you try to scale, there'll always be a clause that puts you back. The other thing, be courageous.
You have to.
You will never grow unless you also take risks. You have to be very courageous. You have to set out there and also come to us who have made mistakes and who have made something out of it. We are accessible. And sometimes you'll find the younger generation looks at us like, well, vintage body, fossils. But sometimes when we are telling you don't step there, it's because you're trying to shorten your journey. The pains that we have undergone, we are trying to show you. So those are some of the things that you need to do. Then it's about learning about money. Our education system does not address financials. And it's something that we really need to look at. There's no kid who is coming out of school knowing, other than debit, credit, and what is an asset, what is a liability. We were never taught about money.
At all.
So you'll find you invest. Every time you think you have made a kill, you think it's time to scale. Or every time you're very broke, you think, maybe if I entered the Zambian market, I can make a kill here. So you are never, very short-term and myopic planning. So those are some of the things that I have found out as key lesson. Then learn to listen. You're not going, there's listening, active listening. You're not being forced to take up everything. So often I go to organization and I start telling them, maybe you need to do this, you need this. Then they look at you. They are like, why haven't you done it for yourself? As we have made this multi-billion company, who are you to come and tell us what to do? You're giving us theories. But the reality is that you're also speaking from your personal experience because you can see. My last point would be timing. You have to know when to do what. When it comes to scaling, you need to have done a full front-end loading of the whole process. It is a process, it is not an event. You just don't wake up and you decide, DRC, I hear everybody is there. This is the new frontier. I have heard other big people are also doing big business there. So you have to have timing because you know your business, you know what you want to achieve, and also you need to think about the future. We are talking of legacy, but the legacy really is, will my business survive me? My son, who is a computer scientist, looks at me and my small business is like, Mom, because the example I set for him is how to work for Safaricom, how to work for Chevron Global. That's what he knows. That is success. But this entrepreneurship we entered, we are not happening. We are not happy. He's not happy. He can't be able to get the kind of lifestyle he had. So even out of the pain of entrepreneurship, he's starting to see, I don't think I like this entrepreneurship. So it is really also showing this younger generation and telling them, this is where you start. The future belongs here because even for somebody, Chevron Oil, somebody put a seed and had to go through the trenches for that company to be that global. So for me, scalability is about opportunity, timing, planning, money, understanding money, and knowing who to work with. Talent also is very important. Who do you choose to work with? Who do you employ? Do you employ because you have a crisis, you have won a tender, then you go out there and you get somebody? So that's my 2 cents.
It's amazing, even as Lenny jumps in, and as we then start closing, I'd like you guys to think, as Lenny, as we tap into that conversation, is what is going to be your legacy conversation as we close. But one thing you've said that I just thought about, what I've found is, 1% in any great venture, 1% is the idea. 99% is execution. People think, oh, it's only me this idea, only me this idea. I can guarantee you, many people have the idea. 99% is execution. But what I found that really, for me, has worked for me somehow. Imagine when I have an idea, like I tell you, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
I say it. I said in a restaurant, somebody said that Mike is just a dreamer. Somebody the other day said, I said in another conversation, say in a restaurant, and a guy there, told somebody, that guy is just dreaming. Is he going to do this? He doesn't realize. Be in 1.5 years, we'll have a book. We'll have that. But he will still be saying if Mike was
the dreamer.
So I figured out that sometimes you have to tell your dream. You know why? Because people will hold you accountable.
Yes.
My son asked me the other day, you're in podcast number? When are you going to have a TV show on Netflix? Imagine the guy's asking me.
Yes.
When? Tell me. Because I'm telling my friends in schools.
Yes.
So what happens, you tend to find pressure when you say your story. People think, because I say my story, people are going to copy. What copy? Lenny, if you're doing a business, you say you're going to become the biggest media agency in Africa, and you tell your kids and you tell everybody, they'll ask, this one even is a dreamer. But what happens, that 3 o'clock at night,
yes,
you think and say, what did I say yesterday? How am I going to do what I said? It's like telling yourself in your mind, you have to become successful. The people around you start questioning. Even your mother will ask you, kuliendaje? Your friend will ask you. Pauline ask you, how is it going? How is it going? How is it going? Because what you tend to do, you challenge yourself, And because you say it, it becomes part and parcel of your of a DNA. Is that correct?
Yes.
So maybe it's not, it's from my point there is telling people, don't be scared to share your journey. Because when you share your journey, as you said, Pauline will tell you, hey, even me, I'm interested.
Yes.
I can invest in your business. Sometimes the people who have invested in my business is because people I told a story said, Mike, I bought that thing, you tell them, are you raising money?
Yes.
But if you keep it to yourself, how are you going to know I have money to invest? And it could be in the most weirdest places. I could be working with you in Karura Forest. I tell you my plan.
Yes.
You tell me, hey, but they have some spare cash. How much?
How much?
So you see, we need to encourage guys to share. We have this thing of hiding. I'm doing my thing. I won't tell you. The other day, I told somebody, what are you doing? Which business plan? He told me, that's where. Mike, I can't tell you. I said, okay, you keep it. Because he doesn't know if I'm going to tell him.
Yes.
Give him just one thing and tell him, by the way, I heard somebody else has already done that idea.
Correct.
Elsewhere. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. So you can crowdsource knowledge.
Yeah.
Or you even, a founder who's looking
Yeah,
for
he's
that
there.
kind of business and you
Absolutely.
direct them.
Even sitting you next to a plane. But don't say what you say. Anyway, Lenny, as we now go to a legacy story, what are some of the things, your takeaways, especially in your business, which I'm very keen to know how many media agencies have managed to transcend the second generation?
It's a great
Even,
question.
even Scanad, I think it's still first generation.
Still first
Really
generation.
first generation.
Great question, because actually Jeff Odundo, the former CEO of the Nairobi Security Exchange, asked me that question. And what was one of the questions that actually got me to list on the Ibuka segment,
Okay.
which is now for companies that are looking to, at some point, do a capital raise. And there's only one in Kenya that has gone to the second generation, because it's a family business as well.
Okay.
Only one.
In your whole industry.
Yes.
All of you.
All of us. Some were really huge, and then when the founders fell out, they all collapsed.
Yes.
And it's very sad in that way. Because all these global agencies were all founded by individuals, and they made sure these things, that's why they have names.
McCann or whoever.
Yeah, McCann, Ogilvy, TBWA, those are people's names. Those are initials of people, DDB, those are people's initials. They managed to make sure that the businesses were set up to get to the second generation. So one of the key things that I found is there is a knowledge gap. A lot of us who've built businesses were very good at one particular industry. And that's why we became entrepreneurs in that industry, and we grew our business to a certain level. But it gets to a point now when you're talking about scaling, it's like the difference between driving a Vitz and driving a trailer, an 18-wheel trailer. You need different skills. I think sitting here, I think it's only Peter who has been able to jump across different industries and successfully build businesses in different industries. I'm still in the same industry I started out in.
Same.
And actually, that's one of the reasons why we also started a leadership program called Amalgam, because you realize you need totally different skills. And I think that's one thing that we need to have a clear reality of as entrepreneurs. If you're scaling, you need different skills. One of the biggest challenges we're facing right now because of scaling tax. Tax becomes one of your biggest risks in your business. These guys wake up one morning and they put a tax on something, and suddenly your business model becomes extremely tough to operate. So things like how you're doing tax. What you also said, Pauline, thinking about scaling. How do we think about scaling? We're thinking about scaling my own business to become bigger. But you probably need expertise of someone like, say, like Peter, who's telling you, no, what about an adjacent industry? This is where this thing is going. So we also need to look at acquiring knowledge from outside sources to help us see where we should be going in terms of our scaling. Not necessarily just doing the same thing, but bigger.
Diversity.
It could be doing something that is slightly different and maybe something that you could develop expertise in very quickly, and that can help you to scale a lot faster. And the other one is now when it comes to capital raising, I mean, like for me, one of my biggest fears was unruly shareholders. Yeah. I have seen an AGM of a major bank stopped because guys didn't get lunch. The AGM was stopped. I've seen another one. Those fighting because of umbrellas. So that kind of thing gave me a lot of phobia. I'm like, no, I don't want shareholders. I don't want people to come into my business because of that. So it's also to talk to people who are in these sectors as well to understand what kind of people you want to attract into your business, so that experiences, say like what like Peter's experiences have taught me a lot. Peter and I think and also Paul Kukubo. Yeah, where you exited, well, then you came and bought back and so on. So I've seen those kind of things happening. So when you talk to a lot of these advisors, especially on capital, then they actually help you to understand the things that you can do and they help you clarify what values you have and see what kind of capital you need to attract. So that is to enable you to scale.
Wow. You know, today when you're saying that, I've just thought to myself, when I look at Peter, I look at Lenny, I look at Pauline, there could be a board somewhere, a company that is undergoing turmoil.
Yes.
That run by a PE fund, maybe a founder. But those the PE fund about to take over that business or trying to kick the CEO out, whatever, or before things become too bad, ideally they're thinking of bringing certain board members. Me, I call them scrum board members. They come and help you stabilize.
Yes.
They tell you, Hapa, we'll do what has to be done. And I feel it's quite sad that, and I hope that one of our legacy conversations out of what we do in Foundersbattlefield is be able to have a repository of people like you guys, where when my business is going through, and you know, Pauline has consulted for a few of these businesses that have eventually really struggled. And you think you'd realize the management and the board are totally misaligned. Totally misaligned. Some of these PE funds have people in the board that are very transactional, very academic. What they need is Peter's experience at that particular moment. Your experience to tell them and say, guys, how you're going to handle crisis is like this.
This way.
It's you're the one with the crisis. Because they'll say, let's go and hire an agency. They need to bring you, and say, Lenny, can you please be this board? Peter, can you sit in this board, guide us? Pauline, can you sit in this board and guide? Because maybe sitting in that board, you're going to say, hey, guys, no, hold on. I've been through this path.
Yes.
So one of the hopes we're going to do is, and I hope you guys, we're going to be there, is being eventually creating what we call a singular platform that allows some of the companies, founders, to reach out to you and say, you know me, I need Peter's capability. I think I need Pauline's capability. I need Renee's capability, to be honest. Those are the people I need. Because first of all, how do I know you? Even how will I access you? So that's one of the things we're hoping to. We hope that this eventually, because you're going to have maybe 120 entrepreneurs that go through this. Yes. That's going to be a very rich pipeline of capability, right? That can save a lot of businesses from going belly up. Is that correct? I also think at the point when government we were doing this with government, and government was about to, the stakeholders were then not aligned with what I was trying to do or what we are doing, maybe at that point, what I should have required is a whole different set of board members.
Yes.
Who should have told me, Mike, the way you're going to handle this one is like A, B, C. But as you say, it's Hubri's business. You're there saying this, and I'm going to maneuver. How can this person do like this? Yeah, okay, eventually there's an output. But maybe the output would have been differently. If maybe you had a different set of board members then. We don't know. At that, because maybe you need a different set of crop of people who say, no, let us figure out how to negotiate this issue differently for another kind of outcome. You get my point? Yes. So So let's look out for that. As we close, Peter or anyone, can you go, if you think you've got your legacy closing conversation, which I ask everybody, and this legacy conversation is something we're going to hold you accountable. You know, this is public information.
Yes.
So whatever you say will be repeated to you in another forum. See you. Twende, as you wind up.
Okay. Specifically about the scaling topic, do it. Regardless of these fears and the things that we're talking about, it's better you do it and learn as you go. Then you start saying, Mike said, it's tough. Peter said, oh, you're making decisions without data. I'm not saying that you don't do it. Do it. Reach out. We are out here. The reason I actually went to consulting was part of my giving back. Because I realized there's an entrepreneur there who is going through the pain I went in 2004. Being auctioned. It's dark out there. They don't know how to come out of it. Yet I've lived it. And it's a skill that I sleep with. I might as well sell it. And that's why I'm actually consulting for SMEs. It's not that my businesses are struggling or I'm no longer chairman of my businesses. I just decided this 30 years that I've done this, surely this is worth to somebody else. And proof of concept has come because I'm consulting for firms. Sometimes I just go for analysis. Sometimes I go for transformation. There's people who want scaling, actually, is one of the things companies are approaching me for. Come and guide us on how we can scale. We are all here. And now, collaboration. We need to collaborate, all of us. If I go to audit or to help in business transformation for a particular SME, I still have to come and speak to you about how do they brand, how do they advertise. And let me tell you something, your space has changed. You know, I used to be his client. And the things Len used to do for me 15 years ago, you can't do them today. Yeah. And you come with a media schedule with a TV station and legacy media. It cannot work. Now we've gone
New age.
So the entrepreneurs out there, step out, look for us, look for people like us to guide you. You don't want to give them, to put them in a way they control you, put it on an advisory board. You don't have to have a formal commercial board. Get an advisory board. Or a board for a project. Yeah, I'm getting into this project. I need you guys specifically for 6 months to a year, specifically for this. That's my advice for younger entrepreneurs.
Scrambled, yes, exactly. Great. Good point.
Great points, Peter. Yeah.
Closing.
I also say, like, the key things that you should be looking at is why. The why. Why are you scaling? Why do you want to scale? Be very clear in that. And then after that, then you start looking at the how you're going to do it. And I like that point that Peter made. You need advisory. You need proper governance. And the other thing that's very important, you need great talent and good succession planning. Like for me, I mean, like our company, like in 2020 when COVID hit, actually just a month before we went into lockdown, I lost my biggest client. We lost 60% of my business.
Wow.
And then COVID hit.
Hey.
So a lot of the people that I had put in place as going to be the guys who were going to take over into the future left the company because we had to do pay cuts, deep pay cuts, of over 50%. People left. So we have to start rebuilding. So once you have a great talent pool and people that you have trained and you think that they're going to succeed, make sure that you are able to sustain them there. And I'm sure we're going to have Ken Joroge on the program at some point in future. And Ken is one gentleman. I remember sitting with him in his office. I think it was in 2014. Ken was selling ringtones. And I was there also doing media plan for him. And now look at where Ken is. And the last time I met him, he told me, what I love is that I'm a 10% shareholder, but of $1 billion company. Instead of being a 100% owner of a $10 million company. So those kind of stories really encourage us. And as Peter said, seek out people who've done it before and make sure that your company at least can move. Let's go up to, let's say, challenge ourselves to the 5th generation. And that will be great success.
Wow. Interesting.
Wow. Let me move a bit from the scalability just from the business perspective. We're saying we're having genuine conversations. And for me, then we also look at the female business, female-led businesses, scalability. Time. It takes a lot of time to actually scale a business. It takes a lot of hours. And one of the things that I have seen, even with my colleagues, Mike, I am also chair for Commonwealth Business Women Africa in Kenya, is that as a woman, you're juggling so many things. You have children, you have a husband, you have relatives, you're playing black tax and everything. And one of the things, even whether corporate or whether you are scaling a business from whatever perspective, I always say, you travel. You travel a lot. You're always in this location in the office. I make this joke. By the time you come back, you find you're the second wife. You're no longer the first. And those are the realities of an African woman doing business, that nobody gives you the time, neither the children, neither the husband, to actually be able to do business the way it's supposed to be done, because it's a very patriarchal society and male-dominated space. So for a woman, the one thing that I would say when you're scaling your business, timing is everything. Then also think through what it is that you want to achieve. Sometimes your mental health, your stability is more important than the scaling of the business. So sometimes, what are you willing to trade off? And you'll find that your most active life, sometimes moments are between, the childbearing and the child rearing age. So it becomes such a controversy for most of us, for the women, to actually be able to go with the business. I always remember a statement I have never forgotten. Like when I was doing all the scaling of Safaricom, I took a lot of time in there. And my own sister told me something. I have never admired you. And I'm thinking, what do you mean? I am such a success. And she told me, I don't admire you, Pauline. And I asked her why. Because your child is even my child.
You are not present.
You get? So that scalability, you also have to learn what are the sacrifices that you have to make at that particular time. And she told me, I never want to be promoted to those levels of yours. Or generally, as you grow your business, never want to be the biggest company where is the family unit.
Yes.
Is compromised. And even for men, it is something you want to spread the whole day. And when you go back, you are in the office very early in the morning, you're reading, gym at 6 a.m., you're reading the newspapers or whatever digital part you are, and then you get home every day when the children are asleep. So as we scale businesses, we also need to look at the whole person. How do I ensure? And for me, I want to be remembered. I always remember telling, even today I tell my people, your child is sick. What are you coming to do here? You're of no use to me. You're of no use to this business if you're coming to tell me your child is sick in the office. So call me, take your child to the hospital. Let's have a discussion when your mental capacity is good. So for me, I always say my legacy is one of humanity. It is one of growing businesses where I'll be remembered for having set the next generation into a more humane working environment. So when we scale, let's also not tear the human, so that you are with this team and they are actually literally half dead, so that you can accomplish this goal. I've been there. I've been in those trenches where you don't even know whether you're going south. You change bags. Almost you're changing bags at the airport, where, you also need to ask fundamental questions. Where is humanity in all that, and what are we trying to achieve? So scaling is good, but also don't just be driven by by the business itself. Sit back and reflect.
As you say that, Pauline, yesterday I called you, I told you that, or this week, I asked you, where are the women founders? We have a list of founders that we have put together for this activity. And I must tell you, and I'm very proud of you guys as a second group of people who, when I reached out to Peter, even Lenny said, "I'll be there, Michael." I told you, "I'll be there." You know, I find it, and when I told you I'm looking for more women founders, I said, everybody is giving me the same 20 names. It's like amazing. I call somebody, they give me the same 20 names. I said, where are the women? As you said, you've clearly said that we should not aspire to build businesses, but at the behest of our family units, which is also in itself important. But then where are the women founders? I've been looking for them. I hear the same names, the same names. And even those same women founders, trying to get them to come on the show, very difficult, because what am I supposed to say? I don't want to expose my life. So I find it, and I would like to close by really thanking you. And sometimes it also saddens me when I talk to a founder who has gone through such significant, their story is so profound. And they tell you, no, I'm going to shoot in episode 20. I ask myself, this one, there's so much to share, but they want to shoot. So they want to be there in somewhere but nowhere, you know? The conversation, hedging to see what happens. And I find it so pathetic, to be honest, because I just can't understand the person, because there's so much to share. You just need to step up. And I think the moment you realize, and I'm trying to do a study, is it an age thing? Is it the people who are below 40 or a certain age that immediately you realize, no, this is nonsense. Let me just go do my business. Okay? So if I look, for instance, only one founder, the first one, was below 35. Kevin. The rest you have to ask, you know, it takes me 3 hours on average to convince you guys there's nothing. I called you, Mike, none. We say, done. You know, some entrepreneurs, it's a 3-hour conversation.
Really?
To convince somebody to come and just share information about them. Not even them. What have we talked about us? We've been honest.
Yes.
You know, the reality people don't realize, people already know about you anyways.
Exactly.
So what are you going to be hiding? So you'd rather come and correct the story rather than waiting for other people to be speaking about it. Every time you go to a restaurant, unajua ule, amewacha bibi. Unajua ule. Biashara ilienda. Unajua ule amepigwa auction. Unajua ule wanataka fanya hivi. No, I don't understand. People know anyway.
Out there.
So I'm just saying, you can as well define the story. And this is a call, really, to you founders. And the challenges, you guys realize that your problems are opportunities for others to learn from. And you need to come and say your story. Otherwise, your story will be owned by other people.
Yes.
And so I want to thank you guys for being the men and the women in the arena. You know, it's you'll be surprised. The conversations you've had today may change many people's careers, or many people's. Somebody's about to quit. Somebody's just been fired yesterday. To know that they have to wake up and be told no. Go. Somebody who is trying to figure out how to. You know what I mean. So we want to close by thanking you guys. And also looking forward to some of the conversations that you guys totally have validated, that the founders operating system, the conversations you're going to have in the future is what we need to be having, beyond academics. You know, balance sheet, we know. P&L, we know. Michael Porter's 5 forces, we know. You know, in order to find a Google ChatGPT, we move. Is that correct? But I can't ChatGPT this conversation. Because where do I start? Right? So we want to thank you. God bless you. But at the same time, is close this and thank the team behind this and the movement, and wishing you well in your book, which I really want to read. Wishing you well in your memoirs and books, and definitely wishing you well, bye-bye, in terms of what you're trying to do, and also your succession plan as build your business. I visited you recently, and I saw how much you've expanded. So I guess we have to support each other, and we have to support the economy ahead and the founders ahead. I think building a movement is not about occasionally going to the streets and everything. Is we have to build it from within, and then be able to change our country. So thank you for participating, and also we look forward to our next episode. Thank you.